Chapter 1. Crossing. Ice Dragon Slayer. Snow-white seagulls lined up and flew across the blue sky in groups. The waves swept up by the sea breeze repeatedly beat the beach tirelessly. Unknown seas, unknown islands. The panting Loya sighed so, and then sat on the beach weakly. In the time just now, Loya ran around the island and was half tired before coming to this conclusion. Now he can be sure of one thing: if all of this is not the kind of prank that belongs to the legend, then he really has crossed. The instant noodle bucket half buried by the sand under the feet is proof. Loya was originally a small clerk. He just graduated and worked very hard every day. During the rare May Day holiday, Loya bought bread, instant noodles and soda, ready to spend the night with his teammates. He had just walked to the computer with instant noodles, and he lost consciousness before reaching for the power button. When he came back to his senses, he found himself standing on a golden sandy beach with a bucket of instant noodles with ham in his hand. What was blowing on the front was not the hot and dry air that was mixed with the smell of sweat, foot odor, smoke and instant noodles in the narrow rental house, but a fresh and salty sea breeze. At that moment, Luoya was stunned. This sudden change made his brain freeze for a while, until the instant noodles in his hand fell down, and the hot boiling water scalded his feet before he came back to his senses. The fear and anxiety caused by this unknown situation made him run along the island like crazy, trying to find a trace of people and ask about the situation. But to his disappointment, this small island is really an uninhabited island, and it is not even as big as the old housing area where he rents a house. The limit of vision is the blue sea. Here is a real island. Sitting on the scalding sand, Loya moved his butt, a little unbearable for the heat of the sand after being exposed to the sun, so he stood up on his knees and stumbled to the shade of a coconut tree on the edge of the beach. Am I really crossing over? Loya looked at the white flip-flops with broken rubber on his feet, and said to himself a little absent-mindedly, no reason to cross. He didn't know where this place was, but according to the tradition of time travel, it was definitely not the original world. Those familiar people and familiar things have left him, and the memories and regrets of the past have nothing to do with him from now on. Suddenly he became excited. Playing with me, right? Today, my sister invited me to open up Wasteland for 25 hours. The salary will be paid the day after tomorrow. I can't wait for a few extravagant days for me. I haven't had dinner yet. Speaking of this, Loya closed his mouth all of a sudden, and he touched his stomach. Indeed, dinner hasn't been eaten yet. Thinking of this, Loya looked up at the coconut hanging on the tree, swallowed, and there was a flash of determination in his eyes. Resolutely not to starve to death. It is not known whether there are any beasts Loya in the depths of the island, so Loya gave up the plan to explore the island. He took off his t-shirt, straightened it, and glanced at the coconut tree. Well, fine, not long enough. Looking around, Loya sneakily took off his trousers, wearing only boxers. This is a tree climbing method he learned from watching variety shows. He uses a belt to go around the tree, and then move up little by force. Hey! The only flip-flops left under his feet were thrown away by him, and Loya jumped vigorously, pulling the end of his pants in one hand, and stomping on the trunk to fix himself in midair. Then what's the next step? Move the strap upwards with your hands in the air. Wouldn't it fall off then? Loya pulled his pants, stunned again. After thinking about it, Loya clamped the tree trunk with his thighs, took a deep breath, and tried to move his pants up. Tear. He just moved up less than 10 centimeters, and with the sound of the cloth splitting, his jeans that he had been wearing for several years were torn directly from the trousers. The sudden situation made Loya stumble, and he was about to fall backwards. But fortunately, his eyes are fast and his hands are fast. He threw his trousers away when he loosened his hands, and then exerted force on his waist and abdomen, and leaned forward quickly, holding the tree trunk with both hands, avoiding the danger of falling. He took a deep breath for a while, and finally, Loya decided to give up trying this unreliable method, slipped down the tree trunk embarrassingly, and fell back to the ground. Although the pants are torn, it is better than naked. When putting on pants, inner thigh was sore because of the bark grinding. Loya sucked in the cool air and pulled the pants up. At this moment, he looked down and saw a few pebbles next to the roots of the tree, rolled his eyes, and picked up two. During the process of climbing the tree just now, he found that although the coconuts looked very green, the connection was not very stable. As the trunks swayed, they collided with each other, making a dong-dong sound. Although I don't know if it will work or not, it's up to you. Come on, stone monster. Raise your hand, twist your hips, lower your body, and throw it hard. Bang! The moment Shizi shot, there was a muffled sound, and then Loya heard the sound of something exploding. Just as he was about to look up, a water-stained turquoise hard shell fell from the sky, and he subconsciously reached out to catch it. Looking at the things in his hands, Loya opened his mouth slowly with an exaggerated expression like Mr. Sloth, a well-known emoji pack. This is a coconut. Then he looked up quickly, and sure enough, the coconut he was aiming at just now. The smaller coconut next to him had disappeared, and a long line appeared on the turquoise shell of the surrounding coconuts. Long, uneven scratches, like a bullet. When did my strength become so strong? Or, the gravity here is too much lower than the earth. Loya blinked, a little unresponsive. He looked down at the half coconut shell in his hand, and in the center of the white coconut flesh, a thin layer of water gathered there. He licked his dry lips, and decided to ignore the weirdness just now, raised his coconut shell and raised his head to drink it. After drinking it all in one breath, Loya breathed a long sigh of relief. The coconut milk was sweet and refreshing, which eased the heat in his body and made him feel better. But coconut milk alone can't fill his stomach. Loya looked at his clean and white fingers, and tried to use his nails to buckle the layer of coconut meat. What surprised him was that the coconut meat, which was obviously difficult to get rid of, was like the cream in the middle of the Oreo at the moment. Am I too strong? Or is this coconut a strange variety? Holding this piece of pure white coconut meat in his hand, he didn't have time to think about it. His internal organs, which had just been driven by the coconut milk, were rebelling, and the stomach acid secreted a lot made his stomach feel like a burning pain, and he urgently needed supplemental food. He opened his mouth wide and bit off more than half of the coconut meat in one bite. A bit hard. After scraping the coconut flesh a few times, Loya looked at the coconuts on his head with bright eyes. Although it was too late, the thirsty Loya still ate more than a dozen coconuts, and then patted his stomach with satisfaction, leaning against the coconut tree and taking a nap. After solving the problem of the 5 Zhang temples, Loya finally had time to think about the changes in her body. Thinking about the panic and running around the island before, Loya only now realizes how incredible it is. No matter how short this distance is, it is 7 or 8 kilometers long. He ran for several kilometers without stopping. Is this still the otaku clerk in a subhealthy state? Not to mention half-dead exhausted. Exhausted is impossible. It's not normal to think about this. Is this the golden finger that the legendary party must have? Loya pondered while burping. There are several young people in modern times who don't read online novels, and Loya is naturally one of them. When he was a junior in middle school, he had fantasized more than once that he really crossed one day. What kind of golden finger would he get? Is it Sharingan, Zanpakuto or Devil Fruit? Even the ability of the SOS group has been obsessed. But he definitely didn't expect it to be so powerful. At this moment, a transparent blue panel suddenly appeared in the air in front of Luoyu. He blinked, thinking that he was dizzy, rubbed his eyes and raised his head to look again. The panel was still there. This is my golden finger. Loya regained his energy all at once, and the drowsiness caused by the lack of blood supply to his brain disappeared instantly. But when he saw the big characters at the top of the panel clearly, Loya's expression stiffened and he muttered aloud. Ice, destroy, dragon, demon, guide, scholar, _ Chapter 2 Upgrade, 0 Breakthrough. The term Dragon Slayer comes from the manga, Fairy Tail. In the comics, the Dragon Slayer was founded by Eren Berselian. It belongs to a type of sorcerer. It uses ancient magic that transforms one's own physique into that of a dragon slayer magic. It is a type of specialized hunting. Dragon sorcerer. Loya's favorite is Hokage when he crosses over, but he has also chased after this famous hot-blooded young manga. Even during that time, the Three Migrant Workers manga was not as attractive to him as Fairy Tail. Dragon slayers have the physique of a dragon, and can restore their stamina and increase their strength by consuming substances with the same attributes as their own magic. Or by using the power of the dragon, the scales of the dragon can be burst out and the attack and defense can be improved. This kind of magic is used to kill dragons, so it is called dragon-slaying magic. When Loa first came into contact with this comic this year, he regarded it as a sacred book for a while, and was deeply attracted by all kinds of handsome magic in it. Every week, he would go to the corner shop to buy the latest one with the pocket money he saved. Published, sometimes even his mother told him to buy Chan oil money. However, no matter how great the enthusiasm, it will fade with the passage of time. Later, due to the procrastination of the plot of the original work and the aggravation of his studies with age, he slowly lost the motivation to continue to chase. But these are not the point. Ice Dragon Slayer. Is there such an option in the original book? God, Serena doesn't have this either. Loya's eyes widened, carefully recalling the plot he had seen. In the original work of Fairy Tail, there has never been an Ice Dragon Slayer wizard, not in the first, second and third generations, not even a side description. Maybe Serena, who has 8 dragon magic crystals, can do this kind of magic, but the probability is not high. Because according to the urine nature of Rimmon, the ability of ice with the attributes of the protagonist will definitely be exposed very early, instead of not appearing for more than 10 years like now. This is my life-saving golden finger, don't use any kind of strange magic. Not pure support like Wendy. In a touch of unease, Loya began to observe this interface. This interface is simply divided into left and right parts. The left is a series of attribute introductions, and the right is a skill tree composed of block icons, which is somewhat similar to WoW's former talent tree. Luo curiously clicked the colored icon at the bottom of the talent tree with his finger, and a message jumped out. Dragon Power. 1/100%. Dragon Power can increase the strength of Dragon Slayer's Dragon Slayer magic, but more than 30% of his body begins to transform, and after more than 90%, Dragon Slayer's body begins to transform into a dragon. The first attribute is not a good thing, and Loya's heart is cold when he sees it. As mentioned in the skill introduction, although the Dragon Slayer magic used by Dragon Slayers is powerful, it has serious sequelae. According to Aaron Bersarian, every Dragon Slayer will follow the annihilation of Dragon Slayers. The use of dragon magic gradually turns into a dragon. Loya is no longer the second-year junior of the year. If this effect can be reversed, or if there is a magical power of Gerald's level in this world, otherwise he really wants to try what it is like to become a dragon. The next few colored icons are all extended by dragon power, and Loya clicks to view them in turn. Dragon's Body. 10/100%. The body gradually adapts to the degree of the dragon's power, improves the all-round quality of the Dragon Slayer, and can temporarily improve the degree of adaptation by swallowing energy, with large sequelae. Roar of the Ice Dragon. Concentrate the power of the Ice Dragon in the lungs, strengthen it through the magic circle, and then spit it out of the body to attack. Cannot be used due to insufficient magic power. Ice Dragon's Iron Fist. Wraps the power of the Ice Dragon around the fist, and a powerful freezing effect erupts upon hitting. Ice Dragon's Wing Strike. Wrap the power of the Ice Dragon around the arm and swing it like a dragon's wings to attack in a wide area. Cannot be used due to insufficient magic power. Ice Dragon's Claws. Wrap the power of the Ice Dragon around your feet, and a powerful freezing effect will erupt upon hitting. Ice Dragon's Broken Kiba. Wraps the power of the Ice Dragon around the hand, and attacks with claw-like fingers. Ice Dragon's Grip. Grab the target and inject the power of the Ice Dragon into the target. The good news is that what Loya feared did not happen. Although the roaring skill most commonly used by Dragon Slayers is temporarily unavailable due to the problem of magic power, it is harmless. Judging from the skills that can be used at present, the Ice Dragon Slayer magic is similar to the Flame Dragon Slayer magic of the protagonist Natsu, both of which are purely offensive abilities. As for whether this is the case in the future, the current Loya is unknown. In addition to the XX of these Dragon Slayer Standard Edition X Dragons, the skill of the dragon body makes Loya look sideways. Improve the all-round quality of the Dragon Slayer, which must be why he is now strong in stamina. For the increased reason. And just like Natsu's dragon scales will explode after swallowing the magic wizard power in the Tower of Paradise, this skill can improve his own ability in a short period of time. The only disadvantage is probably the kind of thick lines that make Natsu grow, rather than the aftermath of death. Very suitable for blasting seeds, Loya gave a pertinent evaluation. The rest of the icons are gray, and nothing happens when you click them. This situation is very clear when playing games all the year round, and the level is not enough. Loya has some guesses. These remaining icons may be the skills that can only be used after killing the dragon and controlling the power of the dragon, which requires him to continuously upgrade and slowly unlock. Then he looked to the left side of the interface, where the attribute introduction was displayed. Name: Christopher Loya, World Autocorrect. Energy Stage: First Order 0 Layer. Energy Value: 10 out of 10, can be increased. Mana: 500/500. Mana Recovery Rate: 50 per minute. What the hell is Christopher Loya, and the world will automatically correct itself. If you don't change your name, let's call it Loya. What is this energy value? Looking at this attribute column, Loya muttered to himself. Could it be? Loya glanced at the scattered coconut shells and had some guesses in her heart. Suddenly he raised his head and shouted loudly into the air, System. Elf. Mastermind. I'm your host Baba, come out. After a few seconds, Loya coughed awkwardly. It was quiet all around, nothing happened, the sea breeze blew, and he seemed to hear a few, fool. 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 After the embarrassment was over, Loya stretched out his finger and clicked on the arrow behind the word, liftable. Years of web articles and game experience told him not to hold back when he can upgrade. It is certain that some powerful enemies will jump out in the next moment to take his life, and only after upgrading can he save his life. Suddenly, the entire interface became blurred, and a gorgeous blue formation appeared at his feet, and the upward airflow blew his hair upside down. At the same time, waves of blue energy emerged from the air around him and rushed towards him quickly. With the influx of energy, a blue pattern began to gradually spread on his body. Although he hadn't tried to improve before, Loya still felt familiar with this scene. How many Super Saiyans am I? Speaking of which, what's the matter with this kind of strong visual sense of page game upgrades? The abnormality came and went quickly. It only lasted for less than 3 seconds, and Loya disappeared as soon as he finished complaining. The blue patterns covering his body seemed to have life, circling and swimming around him, and finally converged on his hands and wrists, forming 2 diamond-shaped patterns. When everything was calm, Loya stroked the pattern on his wrist and checked the properties on the interface again. Name: Christopher Loya, World Autocorrect. Energy Stages: 1 by 1. Energy Value: 0/20. Mana: 550/550. Mana Recovery Rate: 50 per minute. The mana value has been increased by 50 points, and the energy value required for the next stage has been doubled. Then he looked at the talent tree on the right, but neither the body of the dragon nor the power of the dragon had changed. Could it be that the increase in the energy stage has nothing to do with my own dragon-slaying magic ability? Or is it simply because the level is too low? The specific situation of Loya is unknown, and he can't help frowning. If it is the first case, then if this world is the world of fairy tale, it is better to say that you can always find an expert who can teach you magic. But if not, wouldn't it be impossible to raise the level of Dragon Slayer magic? But at the moment, there is no need to worry too much about it. Loya doesn't even know the world right now. He hasn't even explored the small island below his butt. Goo! A thunder sounded, and Loya lowered his head and touched his stomach. No way. I'm hungry just after I've eaten. Is the energy value required for upgrading really biological energy? Goo. The belly roared again, confirming Loya's thoughts. Well, it looks like I have to find something to eat. But this time, Loya is not going to continue eating coconuts. He ate a dozen or so just now. Not only was he panicking, but he was also sick and tired. Now he wants to vomit when he sees coconuts. Moreover, he became a dragon slayer and ate coconuts to satisfy his hunger. It was a shame for a dragon slayer. So he decided to hunt and eat meat. Third chapter. Step up. Daily life on the island. Unknown seas, unknown islands. Ice dragons, iron fist. An angry shout resounded through the woods, and blue light flashed past, followed by a dull crashing sound and a crackling sound of freezing. Loya fell from a height of more than 10 meters in the air, and after a few taps on the ground, he stood on his heels. Very good, this wild boar is enough for me to eat for 3 days. Loya sighed as he looked at the wild boar that had been frozen and smashed into several large petals. The size of this wild boar is not too small. The 2 kiba exposed to the outside have the thickness of Loya's arms. It looks like a hill lying on the ground. Even the hind leg that is now broken on the ground is bigger than Loya. Hi. This body type can no longer be described in kilograms, but in tons. But even so, it was barely enough for Loya to eat for 3 days. On the day he accepted the identity of the Dragon Slayer, Loya began to explore the island. At first, for the sake of safety, his hunting target was a little guy who looked like a rabbit but covered with scales. Now, this giant wild boar that dominates the island has also been moved to his recipe. Because in such a few weeks, Loya sadly discovered that it seemed that only these wild boars were left to eat on the island, and he ate them all except the poisonous animals. The special body structure of the Dragon Slayer needs to consume a lot of food every day. In addition to this, Loya also needs to strengthen his own attributes, so he needs to eat a lot of food every day. In the first level and 0 level, the energy value required to upgrade only needs to eat a dozen coconuts to replenish the full amount. But starting from the 3rd layer, pure coconut can no longer provide Loya with a shred of energy, which makes Loya have to change his recipe and hunt the creatures on the island. He found that the more powerful the creature, the more energy value provided to him, in order to keep up with the pace of upgrading. In this way, all the way to upgrade and change the recipe, Loya got the first rare achievement after crossing, eat a poor island. Dispersing the surrounding ice cubes, Loya used the ice to become a stick to connect the pieces of pork in series. With a single stroke of his hands, he easily carried a wild boar skewer that was more than 10 times his size. The strength bonus brought by the body of the dragon is far more than the point that was shown on the day of crossing, because Loya did not recognize his current strength at that time, and the instinctual protection mechanism of the brain automatically limited his strength. And with the proficiency in the past few weeks, Loya has been able to unlock this restriction and exert his real power. Carrying the meat skewers, Loya quickly returned to his residence, a cave. This cave turned out to be the den of a 3-meter-tall brown bear, which was occupied by the Loa dove and killed the owner to eat meat. Taking out the lighter in the bag, Loya shook the fuselage. Only a thin layer of liquid butane was left inside, and it seemed that it would not be used a few times. Putting the meat skewers outside the cave, Loya went inside, and quickly came out with a pile of velvet. These kneaded things from dried leaves are very handy for starting fires. For this, Loya would like to thank Lord Bay and a guy who lived alone on an island for 4 weeks. By watching the videos they shot, Loya learned at least the basic wild survival skills ignition. After finding dry branches, Loya used a lighter to ignite the velvet, and soon a bonfire was created. Thanks to the great ice dragon slayer magic, he didn't have to worry about starting a forest fire and burning himself to death. Taking off a piece of hind leg meat, Loya cleaned a large piece of pork leg meat by the stream, skewered it with a thick wooden stick, and baked it by the campfire. Skillfully freezing the rest of the food, Loya looked up at the sky, waiting for the pork to be cooked in a daze. The experience of the past few weeks has transformed Loya from a cheerful game nerd to a taciturn island hunter. He was flustered for the first 3 days, curling up on the beach to sleep every day, afraid of missing any passing boats. But as time went by, this expectation and anxiety was gradually shrouded in despair. He vented, roared, and cried, but it was of no use to the current situation. It is better to find more clean ones if you have that energy. Leaf cushion bed. After calming down again, Loya packed up her mood and used ice to leave the erected S0S sign on the highest point of the beach and the island. He doesn't know if people in this world can understand this meaning, but even if he doesn't understand, the appearance of words on such an uninhabited island is enough to attract attention. Then came the long wait. The white marks left by the seawater on the stones are the source of the salt in Loya these days. He knew that this thing had mild toxins, and eating too much was bad for the human body, but if he didn't replenish the salt in his body, he didn't even have the strength to go out hunting every day. A thin layer of roasted pork was rubbed on top of it, and Loya bit into it with a big bite. After a while, a piece of pork thicker than his waist entered his stomach. Then he took out a piece of pork again and continued to set it up. The stomach is full, but the energy value is not enough. Loya recited, Goldfinger, silently, and the panel appeared in front of him. Name, Christopher Loya, World Autocorrect. Energy stage, first and 10 layers. Energy value, 85 1/100. Mana, 1000. Mana recovery speed, 100 per minute. Because of the frequent use of dragon-slaying magic during this time, the dragon's body increased with training, from 10% to 12%. The increase in dragon power that Loya was most worried about did not appear, it was still 1%. Other than that, it is these attributes that have changed the most. The mana value reached 1000, twice as much as when he just crossed, and the mana recovery speed was also doubled. The energy stage has finally reached the first and 10th stages. Today, according to the urine quality of Page Games, it is the moment to break through to the second stage. Continue to eat a few large pieces of pork, and the energy value finally increases to 100 1/100. Loya sucked the oil on his fingers with his mouth, put his fingers on the arrow, and chose to lift. Hum. The familiar buzzing sounded, and the blue circle appeared again. Then, streaks of blue energy began to emerge, quickly pouring into his body. But things are a little different today. These blue energies, both in quantity and size, are more and more powerful than they were before. Almost in the blink of an eye, countless energies wrapped around him like a whirlwind, forming a blue cocoon of light. At the same time, an inexplicable coercion leaked out from the inside and spread to the surroundings. The whole forest seemed to have been pressed the prohibit button, and not even a chirping of insects could be heard. Trees are forbidden, water is still, and even the clouds in the sky are still. In this static image, the only thing that is still in motion is the cocoon of light that keeps flickering. This feeling seems to have passed thousands of years, but it seems to be only a moment. Suddenly, the surroundings began to move again, the sea breeze continued to blow the leaves, the creek began to flow, and the forest became noisy again. Click. A soft sound came, the light cocoon was dark blue at this time, and a small crack appeared on the blue eggshell. Click, click, click. The cracks are getting bigger and bigger, and looking from the outside, you can already see the faint blue light inside. Bang. There was a sudden explosion, the light cocoon burst open, and strong cold air shot out, freezing a large forest. In the white water vapor, the humanoid creatures inside were gradually revealed. From his appearance, he couldn't see Loya's original face at all. Now he is 10 centimeters taller and stronger. Pieces of light blue dragon scales the size of fingernails are densely covered on him, and patients with intensive phobia may faint at a glance. At the same time, Loya's pupils turned into golden vertical pupils, and the cold dim light exuded a sense of danger that made people's back numb. But this state did not last long. After the energy dissipated, both the dragon scales and the sharp fingernails slowly shrank back and returned to their normal appearance. Loya closed her eyes quietly, feeling the surging magic in her body. After a long time, he opened his eyes and looked excitedly at the diamond pattern on his hand. Finally, it's time to open up. Chapter 4 One Piece World. Nominations. Bang! The explosion sounded again, and Loya turned his head quickly. This time it was the explosion sound from the direction of the beach. Even if he was so far away, he could smell the pungent smell of gunpowder smoke. Is someone here finally? No matter who it is, I have to leave here. He was fed up with the days on the lonely island, Loya thought fiercely, and then jumped up hard. Click. At the highest point, Loya began to fall from the air, but immediately, a piece of ice the size of a palm appeared under his feet. Lightly on the top, the figure that had just started to fall quickly stopped the castration, and then he jumped again to another piece of ice, so back and forth, just stepping on the ice, and rushing from the air to the beach. Vic feels very aggrieved and angry now. He is just an ordinary pirate with a bounty of 3500W. He has just arrived on the great shipping route and has never even encountered a merchant ship. Why should he be chased by the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters? It's 2 days and 2 nights to chase. Did I provoke you? If it weren't for the specially made flying fish, which was not weaker than the naval warship, he would have been shackled and escorted to the propulsion city as early as 2 days ago. But the luck ends there. The warships behind seem to be tired of this game of cats chasing mice. From just now, the cannons on the bows of the warships kept firing, and even if they destroyed their sails, they did not stop. Losing the sail is fatal to a wooden sailing ship like the Flying Fish, and Vic, in grief and indignation, ordered a desperate attempt to get close to the shore. What about the Lieutenant General? I'm Vic Scissorhands. Absolutely will not be caught. Although this island is a bit strange, it is obviously a summer island, but there is a 10-meter-high ice sculpture on the beach. However, Vic, who was driven to a dead end, couldn't care less. After docking, he quickly ordered the crew to fire back with artillery to prevent the warship from approaching. Bang! The shell exploded again, this time directly hitting the broadside of the Flying Fish. The pirates who were loading shells below the deck suffered heavy casualties, blood and severed limbs scattered all over the place. After all, it is only a pirate, and how can the artillery hit rate be comparable to that of a well-trained navy? Moreover, in order to increase the speed of the Flying Fish, it did not carry a few cannons, and the scattered counterattacks did not pose a threat to the warships that were getting closer and closer. At this moment on the warship, seeing the pirates' artillery being destroyed, the Navy raised their muskets and broadswords one after another, waiting for the command to charge. An officer walked quickly to the man standing at the bow of the ship, approached and saluted. Lieutenant General Flying Squirrel, the Scissor Pirates have lost their artillery counterattack ability. Do you order a charge? After hearing this, Lieutenant General Mole, wearing a lavender-striped suit and dark blue shirt, with a dark purple mohawk head, looked at the pirates on the beach with a serious expression, and waved his hand. Cannon cover. Strike. Yes. Upon receiving the order, the warship immediately stopped power and began to slow down. At the same time, several small boats were released, and the Navy officers quickly approached the coast under the cover of artillery. The Navy is here. Brothers, kill! Vic roared, raising the musket in his hand and firing. Loya came to the beach outside the forest and saw such a messy scene. He saw the Flying Fish flying with thick black smoke at first glance, and then saw the blue seagull flag with the words, "Marine," in the distance. No way, after all, the scene after the explosion of such a big ship is really spectacular. Hiding behind the coconut tree, Loya narrowed his eyes. This is the Navy logo in the OP. In this way, I came to the world of One Piece. Loya looked at the lively scene on the beach in shock, a little confused. Came to the world of One Piece with the fairy tale system. It's not a good cut with a completely different power system. The situation on the beach now is a simple navy chasing and suppressing pirates. Loya turned his gaze to Vic, who was in command of the battle, and carefully identified him, thinking that he should just be an unknown guy. The navy in the world of One Piece is not easy to mess with, but the pirates are different. This group of guys fighting each other may be very strong, but after all, it is just a piece of loose sand. After Loya learned which world this was, he didn't want to provoke this group of navies. Take a look at the pirate ship that was blasted away. If you want to leave, it seems that you have to rely on the navy. So, he aimed his gaze at the scissor pirates who shouted and shot to prevent the navy from docking, and sneered. Although we have no grievances, but I need to leave this island with the help of a naval warship, which of course requires a name certificate. So, I'm sorry. After talking to himself, Loya jumped up directly. The soil under his feet was trampled into cobweb-like cracks by the strange force, and the huge power increase brought by the dragon's body made him appear in the sky in an instant. Because he was behind the scissor pirates, Vic, who could an observation hockey, didn't notice Loya in the air. But he didn't notice, which doesn't mean the mole couldn't notice. His eyes narrowed, and he carefully observed the figure that jumped up. Who is that person? Loya stepped on the ice generated in the air, his lungs bulged high, his hands clenched fists in front of his mouth, and the magic in his body began to gather. A blue magic circle with the height of one person appeared in front of Luo Yu, and the center of the magic circle was facing his open mouth. The ice dragons roar. The next moment, an ice storm blasted out. From the fist thickness at the beginning, it quickly expanded in the air, and turned into a behemoth with a diameter of several meters, like a roaring dragon, slammed into the Scissors pirate group. Inside the formation. Boom. Under Loya's control, the ice storm explodes as soon as it reaches the optimal kill point. A roar like a spring thunder sounded, and Vic was swallowed up by the explosion before he could react. Driven by the strong airflow generated by the explosion, countless tiny ice chips are mercilessly harvesting the life of the Scissors pirates like a razor-sharp knife. The strong cold makes the pirates, wounds frozen before they bleed, became a statue. At the very center of the explosion, where the magic was the most violent, not even a complete corpse could be seen. Dragon Slayer magic, even if it is of the ice attribute, is extremely violent. Otherwise, what's the difference between it and Gray's ice modeling magic? The ice storm exploded, followed by a terrifying chill. The scattered frost instantly froze the surrounding scene, and the waves had just blown up before they were frozen into shape and condensed into hard ice cubes. Even on the warships far apart, the Navy felt a biting chill. Not to mention the Navy officers who were already on the skiff. The ability to freeze. This scene was somewhat beyond Mole's expectations. He guessed that Loya would attack the Scissor Pirates, but he did not imagine that it would be such a crushing massacre. And it uses the freezing ability. But now is not the time to worry about it. Seeing that the frozen area of the sea is about to cover the vanguard troops, Lieutenant General Mole snorted coldly, took out the samurai sword from his waist, and swiftly slashed out. Swish! The huge light blue sword energy that was enough to stop the waves quickly passed over the vanguard, tearing apart the ice that was spreading unrestrictedly. The strong sword chi left a dent on the sea surface. From a distance, the sea was dug out like a piece of jelly. The navy of the vanguard was caught off guard, and it was too late to change the direction of the boat, so they all fell into the sea. But they are the navy, except for a few devil fruit ability, the rest are Grandmaster water. Although the boat capsized, it quickly resurfaced. It's just that everyone was floating on the water, holding hands and lips turning blue, and Kiba kept shaking. It's so cold. Seeing this, Lieutenant General Mole slowly put the samurai sword back into his waist, and commanded the adjutant, send someone to respond to the leading troops immediately. Yes. The adjutant glanced at Mole gratefully, and hurried to convey the order. Admiral Mole of the Navy headquarters is such a general who loves his soldiers. Luoya also saw the light blue sword energy, and suddenly his expression was a little annoyed. The first time I opened the big, I couldn't control the power, and I almost froze the Navy to death. But I can swing it out. Sword energy of this intensity, according to the comics, is at least a swordsman, right? Probably. Thinking back on that heart-pounding sword energy, at this moment, Loya was full of resentment towards Eiichiro Oda. The power system of the One Piece world has always been criticized. The more powerful the characters appear in the later stage, the stronger it is. It feels like a big explosion of attributes in WoW. At level 100, a turtle that refreshes every 3 minutes is more powerful than the previous team. The big boss is also scary. This kind of confusion makes it impossible for Loya to judge which level of navy is on the warship a few hundred meters away from the comics. But then again, this situation is basically a common problem in Japanese comics. Think about Dragon Ball, think about Hokage, think about Reaper. Isn't that the more exaggerated the fighting power in the later stage? Chapter 5 Vice Admiral Mole, Seasick Loya. But even so, there is one thing Luoyu can be sure of. That is, the person who comes will definitely not be a general. Because since the days of Karp and Zephyr, there have been no generals in the navy who specialized in swordsmanship against the enemy. Kizaru, who can compete with Pluto Rayleigh in swordsmanship, has always been Bubu's motion photosensitive wave, or turned into a dynamic photosensitive wave and sent it out. If it is that group of generals, the shot will definitely use a very representative attack. Think of Hawkeye, who is known as the world's greatest swordsman, and several lieutenant generals who have played less than a minute to know that although Sword Chi is a very powerful ability, on the whole, this ability is outdated. At this moment, the battlefield can only be described by the word hell. There are scattered limbs and pieces of meat that have been frozen into ice cubes, and several well-preserved pirate heads, with a blank expression on their faces. Loya jumped out of the air and exhaled a cold breath. The airflow contacts the moisture in the air and turns into a star-like fine particle that falls to the ground. Killed. Why don't I feel sick? Loya thought about this philosophical question. Perhaps it was the desert island hunter who had been hunting for too long, and Loya's view of life had changed in ways he couldn't understand. In the distance, I saw Loya standing on the beach, and Vice Admiral Mole ordered the warship to move over. No matter what purpose the opponent killed the scissor pirates, whether it was a pirate or a pirate hunter, or a hidden master who lived alone in the mountains and forests, as a vice admiral, he was obliged to investigate. The warship stopped 100 meters away, and there was a thick layer of solidified ice in front of it. Warships without ice-breaking equipment could not pass. Mole was not interested in using sword energy to open the way for the warship, and jumped off the ship with a small group of navy. As he got closer, Mole finally saw Loya's appearance clearly, and he was surprised by his immature appearance. You must know that the attack just now is not much less than that of the young Qingzi Dafu. He thought he was a master of his age. As a result, it has only been discovered until now that the age of this person may be a little lower than that of Admiral Aokiji when he first joined the Navy. Admiral Kuzan, codenamed Qingzi, joined the Navy at the age of 19, until he became an admiral in his 30s, and was already known as a monster-level genius. The age of the person in front of him seems to be younger than the Aokiji who had just joined the Navy, but he already possesses such a powerful strength, which undoubtedly shocked the Mole. It would be funny if Loya knew what he was thinking. God TM is younger than Aokiji, I call it baby face. Looking tender. Among the newcomers in the company, he is the best, because he looks good and has a sweet mouth. The Ice Dragon's Roar is a great ultimate move that can only be used after Roha's upgrade, and its power is naturally certain. In comparison, Kuzan's freezing ability was not as good as his when he first joined the Navy. But what about consumption? With just such a move, the magic power in Loya's body was reduced by 1/3. Even if he used all his strength, an attack of this magnitude could only be used 3 times. At that time, the attack of the green pheasant in the frozen sea area of 100 meters was not as powerful as the roar of the ice dragon, but how many times could it be used? A dozen times should be fine. Think of the 10 days and 10 nights of the war between him and Sakazuki in the original book, and you can see Madara. The two sides stood facing each other, looking at Loya's expressionless expression of thinking about philosophy. Mole first said, "Thank you for your help. I am Vice Admiral Mole of the Navy Headquarters, may I ask your excellency?" Mole. Hearing the Mole reporting his home, Loya came back to his senses, and the memory that was not very clear in his mind was instantly sorted out. He looked up and down the person who came. Mohawk had a head, a funny beard, a samurai sword on his waist, and a cloak of justice on his back. This was indeed the appearance of Vice Admiral Mole. This is a good old man. Loya's eyes lit up. Be upright and upright. He loves his subordinates, and is powerful but not as ruthless as Akainu. In general, if Loya wants to leave the island, he is the right person to look for. Even if the scissor pirates are not eliminated as a vote, they will definitely help Loya who is in distress. Loya was not as cold as he was when he was a hunter on the island. Although he had great strength, his mentality was still the same otaku he used to be. I haven't seen anyone in the past few weeks, and I burst into tears with excitement. My dear. Someone is finally here. Take me out of here. I was on a desert island a few weeks ago, and I will eat all the wild boars on the island. Mole. Lieutenant General Mole didn't turn his head for a while. What's going on? Where did the expert just run off to? How did you suddenly become such a refugee? But looking at the dirty and tattered clothes on Loya's body and bare feet, Mole's mouth twitched, and he chose to believe Loya. Under the watchful eyes of a dry navy, Loya boarded the warship. Even if they were far apart from the attack just now, they could feel a strong chill. At this time, they all looked at Loya with admiration, and they didn't care about his refugee outfit. Op-world, what we believe in is that strength is respected, and people with strength will be respected wherever they go. Besides, there are many powerhouses in the world who like weirdness. At this moment, they all turn Loam into a powerhouse dressed in a maverick fashion. Just stepping on the deck of the warship, Loya suddenly grabbed the fence very seriously and stared at the sea motionless. Lieutenant General Mole arranged for the soldiers to clear the battlefield before following Loya onto the warship. Seeing his appearance, Mole asked in confusion, "Mr. Loya, are you?" Loya raised his hand, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and then showed an ugly smile to the mole. "Lieutenant General Mole, do you have any medicine for seasickness?" Mole, what a weird guy. Then he said to the adjutant next to him, "Go to the ship doctor immediately. And prepare a set of clothes by the way." Mole looked at the beggar costume on Loya's body and ordered. After receiving the order from the mole, a ship doctor with Madara white hair rushed over. He made Loya lie half flying against the fence, opened his eyelids with his hands, and asked, "Your symptoms are very serious. And the boat hasn't started moving. It's been like this since I was a child, or it happened recently." Loya didn't know what to say. He couldn't blame others for being stupid. Previously, he wanted to leave the island, but he forgot the biggest weakness of the Dragon Slayer, which is to dizzy all means of transportation. At this moment, his face was pale, and he said weakly, "Eat. Eat the devil fruit. That's it after that, doctor. Is there any help for me?" Devil fruit. The mole next to him lowered his head and thought. Indeed, apart from devil fruit, there is no other way to explain Loya's attack just now. But what kind of devil fruit can make people seasick? Eating devil fruit is hated by the sea, and if you touch the sea, you will lose your ability and go limp, which is a curse in itself. And compared with ordinary fruit power users, Roha also has an attribute of seasickness. The mole was really curious and fortunate at the moment. What a unlucky guy this is. I'm too smart not to eat devil fruits. In fact, this is an excuse that Roha thought up. Dragon Slayer magic is not the original power of this world. After all, it needs a reason to be exposed to people, and the devil fruit is the best excuse. The ghost knows how many strange fruit powers there are in this sea. The so-called dead without proof is such a thing. Besides, Loya is not lying. It is true that he became like this after eating the devil fruit, and there is no psychological burden to say this. Hearing Loya's words, the ship doctor's expression became serious. He first found a jar of potion from the medical bag and handed it to Loya, then took a piece of cotton soaked with alcohol and wiped it on the position of Loya's temple. If it's the sequelae caused by the devil fruit, then the disease can't be cured. You drink this first, it will make you feel better. I'll get you some medicine later, although it won't cure it, but it will give you a good night's sleep. Quote. Thank you, doctor. Chapter 6 Second Order Attributes, Join the Navy. After Lieutenant General Mole made arrangements for Loya, he came to the command room of the warship and took out the phone bug that directly connected to Sengoku. Naval Headquarters, Malinford. Blue 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 blue. Click. Sengoku picked up the handset on the back of the phone bug and asked, "It's the Mole, what's the matter with me?" "That's it, Marshal Sengoku. I picked up a man on a desert island back in Malinford." "Pick it up." Sengoku twitched the corner of his mouth. Although his movements were obscure, he was still caught by the phone bug. The truthful response was on the Mole's side. Mole pretended not to see and continued to report, "Yes. On the way back, we met the Scissor Pirates. I don't know why they kept following my return route, and we were forced to do so until today." Ashore. Mole simply reported the previous battle to Sengoku, and then asked for instructions. "For this Loya, can we absorb it into the Navy? Recently, new pirates have emerged in an endless stream, and we need to absorb fresh blood. It's just that his seasickness is serious. Extremely serious." At the end of the sentence, Mole used the word, extremely serious, to describe it seriously. Seasickness. Sengoku sighed and wanted to express his opinion, but he didn't know what to say. "It sounds like this guy has good strength and can quickly form combat power after joining the Navy. However, you may have heard of a Navy that cannot swim, but have you ever seen a seasick Navy? However, it is indeed a fact that the situation in the sea has become more and more unstable recently. There are a large number of newborn pirates, and their strength is not bad. What the Mole said really needs to be taken seriously. Moreover, the Navy's strength has been severely faulted in recent years, and any potential stock is an object that needs to be drawn." Thinking of this, he no longer bothered about Loya's seasickness, and said, "You can think about it, you can ask him what he means first, and remember to investigate his background. By the way, after I come back, I have a task to arrange for him. You, prepare first, it's about the Chiwahai." "The King's Chiwahai." Lieutenant General Mole repeated the name, clenching his fists. This system that has existed for more than 20 years has always been a thorn in his heart. The dignified Navy needs pirates to stabilize the situation of the Great Route. He bit Kiba reluctantly, but soon let go of his fists and answered seriously, "Yes. In any case, he is first and foremost a Navy. Soldiers are bound to obey orders." After a few weeks of absence, Loya can finally sleep in a real bed. Even if it's just an ordinary Navy room, a thin quilt can't hide the hardness of the wood at all. But it's also a bed. Not a pile of leaves on a stone mud. The ship doctor's medicine is still effective. I couldn't exert any strength just now, and now I just feel a little nauseated. And Shin rolled on the bed. Luoya silently read the golden finger, and opened the system panel again. What appeared in front of him was the familiar interface. Name, Christopher Loya, World Autocorrect. Energy Stage, Second Order 0 Layer. Energy Value, 0.04. Mana, 3,500 3,500. Mana Recovery Speed, 300 per minute. The gap between the Second Order and the First Order is obvious. The magic value of up to 3,500 allows Loya to finally use the Ice Dragon's Roar and the Ice Dragon's Wing Strike, which are the most magic-consuming among Dragon Slayer magic. The power of the former is obvious to all. And in addition to the increase in the magic power in the body, there is a new icon on the talent tree. After looking at it carefully, Loya doesn't know what kind of dragon-slaying magic this is, but this skill is really useful. Ice Shape Magic. Use magic to give the shape of ice cubes, and you can also take the shape of ice cubes. Yes, this is the magic of a hidden exhibitionist. Although it is easy to use, it is not related to the dragon-slaying magic created by Aaron Berselian. Is it because the attribute is ice, so you can learn the shape of ice indirectly? Loya can only guess that modeling magic is the most free magic in the world of fairy tale. It is a kind of magic that relies entirely on the ability of the magician himself. Even if it is the inheritance of master and apprentice, the expression of modeling magic is not enough. All the same, Since it's so free, it's not a strange thing to say that the ice dragon knows the ice shape magic. It's just that Roha wants to know, can the power of the ice shape magic catch up with its one claw level A? However, it is really useful. Loya sighed. In the days on the desert island, although Loya was able to condense ice cubes with cold air, in that case water was needed. And now he can form ice cubes directly through magic, which is more convenient and faster. This is also the reason why he can condense ice cubes in the air as a pedal. In addition to this are the two most important passive abilities. When Roha stepped into the second rank, there were some changes that made him mixed. Dragon Power. 0.02%. Dragon Power can increase the strength of Dragon Slayer's Dragon Slayer magic, but more than 30% of his body begins to transform, and after more than 90%, Dragon Slayer's body begins to transform into a dragon. Dragon's Body. 0.18%. The body gradually adapts to the degree of the dragon's power, and improves the all-round quality of the dragon-killing magician. The degree of adaptation can be temporarily improved by swallowing energy, and the sequelae are relatively large. Although the power of the dragon is the source of Izumi's ability to destroy the dragon, it is not good news that this thing has improved. Loya can only hope that the awakening mode in the original book will appear in the future, and he does not want to become a dragon himself. The body of the dragon is different. This ability to improve the quality of Dragon Slayer wizards in all aspects has improved the advantages more than the disadvantages. The big deal is that the symptoms of seasickness are more serious. This is what happened to Wendy a year later in the original book. Her strength became stronger, but she also began to get seasick. The stronger the Dragon Slayer is, the less resistant he is to vehicles. Night time. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door, and Loya, who was half asleep, opened his eyes and rubbed his eyes. Come in. Squeak. Although it was well maintained by the Navy officers, the age of the warship was there, and the iron hatch made an unpleasant rubbing sound when it was pulled open. Anime characters have an advantage, that is, they basically don't change their looks very much, and sometimes they don't even bother to change their clothes. Lieutenant General Mole's dazzling purple mohawk hair stood out in the moonlight. He walked in, first expressing his apology for the crudeness of the cabin, and then entering the subject. Mr. Loya, where do you want to go next? I'm sorry, because our next destination is Marineford, where no outsiders are allowed. If you need it, we can stop at the nearest island. Marineford. So the timeline was before Akainu became the admiral. Loya rubbed his chin with interest. This world is the world of One Piece. Because the sea area is vast and there are as many pirates as the Crucian carp crossing the river, the strength of the navy is extremely powerful. Otherwise, the rampant pirates could not be suppressed. And Marineford is the famous naval headquarters. The voice of Mole's hidden voice, Loya, heard it, and it was clearly saying that outsiders in Marineford were not allowed to enter, and he wanted to disembark on other islands. But think about it another way, isn't this a temptation for them to absorb themselves as a navy? Thinking of this, Loya smiled and climbed up the pole. So that Lieutenant General Mole, can I join the navy? Look, I have nowhere to go anyway, and I am alone, without any worries. Yes, joining the navy allows you to focus on your work with 12% of your energy. Quote. Change this sentence, it is the line he said when applying for a job after graduation. Loya's desire to join the navy is not a whim, but a conclusion drawn after careful consideration. In the world of One Piece, what ability is the most important? Devil Fruit. No, it's domineering. Now Loya can't be sure whether the magic attached attack can restrain the Devil Fruit ability like armament hockey, but just from the learning of domineering itself, his strength will be much stronger. This world is too dangerous after all. From the perspective of the comics, there are the Tianlong people who don't take human life seriously, the tyranny of the drum country, and the flamingos and sand crocodiles who play with people's hearts. If you want to live a wonderful life in this chaotic sea, you can't just rely on your half-baked dragon-slaying magic. After all, Luoya was not raised by the Dragon Mother, and his knowledge of magic is limited. So the purpose of Loya joining the Navy is obvious. He needs a teacher to teach him domineering and improve his combat ability. Now that he bullies the weak guy, it's okay to say that if he encounters a master, he will definitely be hung up and beaten. And looking at the world of pirates, what other organization is a more suitable choice than the Navy? Chapter 7 Amazing Meal, Fever Navy. Lang Yuking and concubine are interested, and the two have similar smells and hit it off. Oh, that's it. Mo's eyes smiled, showing 12 points of satisfaction at Loya's choice, but his tone was still very strict. Of course you can, but even if you are already strong, join the Navy. You still need to start with the most basic recruits. Can you do it? Quote. Of course you can, Loya replied confidently, and starting from scratch makes it more challenging. There is one more thing that Loya didn't say. He wanted to join the Navy. He was actually going to the recruit camp. After all, from what I learned from the previous conversation, it was not when Akainu was in charge of the Navy. The legendary Zephyr doesn't have a chance if he doesn't watch it now. Besides, who is Zephyr? That's a top teacher. Think about the disciples he has taught, who is not the all-powerful figure in the sea. When Kuzan, Sakazuki, Kizaru and others joined the Navy, they also started as recruits, which was basically a choice made by the will of the universe. Want to get stronger? Then join the boot camp. The final reason is that the worldwide conscription has not yet started, and Loya has no other choice at all. Seeing the confident expression on Loya's face, Mole nodded with satisfaction, folded his hands on his chest, and said, "Very good. It is expected that the warship will arrive at Marineford the day after tomorrow, and then you will join the recruit camp and start training. Now, let's go to dinner." Yes. Naturally, the Navy will not hold a wine glass directly on the deck to hold a banquet like the pirates, but has a separate cafeteria. At the entrance of the cafeteria, Loya took the medicine for seasickness from the ship doctor and took it. His face quickly turned from white to Yuhi. Even if I still feel uncomfortable, I can finally get on with it. Without the support of the young Navy, Loya came to the uncle who was cooking. Hello, I need curry rice for 10 people, and give me a pot of chicken thighs. Oh yes, and the fruit over there. No, just give me the basket. Saying goodbye to the stunned uncle, Loya held the rice in one hand and the drumstick in the other. Kiba bit the basket full of fruit and ran to the mole's table to sit down. Boom! The iron pot fell heavily on the table, proving that it was full of dry goods. Looking at the pile of food in front of him that blocked his vision, Mole's eyes twitched unconsciously. Loya, do you eat so much at every meal? Ah! A chicken leg was thrown directly into the mouth, and Loya was not seen chewing it carefully, and even the belt bone was swallowed in a few seconds. Hearing Mole's words, Loya raised his head from the rice bowl blankly and said, "No, because of seasickness. I have no appetite today." No appetite. In the time of these two sentences, Loya has eaten a pot of curry rice with a head-sized pothole. The mole sighed helplessly and said, "I know now why you say there is no food on the island." Fortunately, they could reach Marineford in 2 days at most. Otherwise, according to Loya's way of eating, everyone on the ship would have to go hungry for a few more days. Seeing how Loya was eating so much, the other Navy in the cafeteria couldn't help but study the curry rice in their hands. Is this stuff really that delicious? Fortunately, this is a naval warship, and neither the quality nor the quantity of ingredients is comparable to that of ordinary pirate ships. Seeing Loya's way of eating, the uncle in charge of cooking hurriedly cut carrots and potatoes, and cooked a second pot of curry before the group finished eating, otherwise many people would definitely not be able to eat dinner tonight. Bang! After eating the last bit of rice into his stomach, Loya loosened the rice bowl. He slumped on the seat with a bulging stomach, opened his mouth to burp, and a string of ice crystals spurted out along the airflow. "I'm full. I haven't eaten such a delicious curry rice for a long time. Uncle, help me prepare 5 more big meat bones, I'll take them away." Clang! A group of Navy almost sat down. Are you really human? Although there are many strange races in this world, and the people who eat a lot have gone to the sea, I have never seen a human being that can eat so much. Mo rubbed his forehead in distress. If Loya really joins the Navy, it seems that he needs to ask the recruits to prepare more meals. Otherwise, with Loya's character, Mo can guarantee that he will definitely grab all his colleagues' meals and eat them. Then train AP, can't get enough to eat. Holding the meat and bones in one hand, Loya bid farewell to the mole and walked out of the cafeteria. The ship doctor told him before he left that he had prepared more seasickness medicine this afternoon, and asked him to go to him and take away the medicines for the past 2 days. The location where the ship's doctor lives is not far from the soldiers' living quarters, just a few steps away from the cafeteria. The Navy in the corridor along the way stared dumbfounded at Loya, who was eating all the way. Every few steps, a big bone as thick as the forearm was thrown into the sea, and it was bare, not even a trace of shredded meat was left. "Hello, is anyone here? I'm here to get the medicine." Standing at the door of the medical room, Loya knocked on the cabin door with a burp. "Oh, it's Mr. Loya. Come in." The voice of the ship doctor sounded in the medical room, and Loya opened the cabin door upon hearing this. Inside is a spacious room, and the air smells of disinfectant and alcohol. There were several white hospital beds lined up on the left, and there were 2 Navy soldiers in hospital uniforms, huddled under the quilt and shivering. The ship doctor was sitting on the chair opposite the door, holding a needle in his hand, and was sucking milky white medicine from a bottle. On the table in front of him, Loya saw several bottles of brown medicine neatly arranged, which should be the seasickness medicine he took today. Seeing Loya walk in, the ship doctor stood up with the syringe, and while observing the medicine inside, he said to Loya, "These brown bottles are 5 bottles in total. You take it first. If you run out or the situation gets worse, you must keep me informed." "Good, doctor." Loya nodded and walked over to put the medicine in Kabuto. Turning back, he saw that the ship doctor was lifting the quilt and pulling down a navy trousers, revealing his white buttocks, so he asked curiously, "By the way, sir, what's up with these patients?" The ship doctor took aim for a few seconds, and stabbed the Navy's ass hard, with undisguised contempt in his words. Hee, many soldiers have caught a cold today due to falling into the water. These 2 guys are too weak, they are actually developed into a high fever. Quote. Loya is not easy to interface. Why did the Navy fall into the water? Not because he didn't control his power. However, I can't completely blame these people for their poor physical fitness. The ice mixed with magic power sprayed by the Ice Dragon Slayer is much lower in temperature than ordinary ice cubes. If you put a piece of ice in a small stream, a large section of water will flow. Coagulate. Although the icy airflow that spread along the sea was blocked by the mole's sword energy at that time, the cold air still eroded most of the Navy on the boat, and the guy who didn't catch a cold could be called an elite. After saying goodbye to the ship doctor, Loya returned to the cabin where he lived. Chapter 8 Malin Faldo, Zepha takes apprentices. Lying on the shabby wooden bed, Loya meditated on the golden finger in his heart and opened his attribute panel. Name, Christopher Loya. Energy stage, second order 0 layer. Energy value, 3/400. Mana, 3,500. Mana recovery speed, 300 per minute. Sure enough, in the second stage, the energy value provided by ordinary food has been pitiful. Looking at the big 3 character on the energy value item, Loya only felt helpless for a while. When he was in the cafeteria before, he quietly opened the panel once. He originally wanted to test whether outsiders could see it, but he was stunned by the word 1 on it. After eating and drinking, Loya opened the panel again and found in despair that the word 1 became the word 2. After that, I continued to eat so many meat and bones on the way to the medical room, and the energy value became 3. It is so difficult to improve just at the 0 level, so what will be the situation in the future? Do I need to eat high-grade ingredients in the future? But this is the world of One Piece and I am not a prisoner of food. Where can I get high-grade ingredients? Closing the panel, Loya rubbed her head in distress. In the afternoon 2 days later. Loya took the seasickness medicine and was lying in the cabin dozing off when a sudden noise woke him up. Putting on his shoes, he staggered to the door. Just as he was about to open the door, before he could put his hand on the door handle, the hatch was pulled open. Unprepared, Luoya stumbled and fell forward with a soft foot, but immediately a pair of big hands supported his shoulders to help him stabilize his center of gravity. Loya looked up and greeted weakly, "Good afternoon. Lieutenant General Mole. Your symptoms of seasickness are getting worse and worse." Mole looked at the pale Loya seriously. In this state, Loya couldn't even stand still, let alone fighting. "Yeah, I'm afraid I have to find a garrison mission in the future." Loya reluctantly pulled her cheeks, revealing an ugly smile. "Those things are still a long way off. Later, the Marshal will make arrangements. But from today onwards you can be relieved, because we are at Marineford." When Loya heard the words, he looked behind the mole, and sure enough, the huge military fortress appeared at the junction of sea and sky. Even though the distances still far apart, the two Chinese characters, Navy, on the front of the fortress are still clearly visible. This is one of the three major forces on the Great Route, the Navy headquarters. Finally, it's finally here. Loya couldn't help but burst into tears. These few days have been a kind of torture. The effect of the ship doctor's medicine is getting worse and worse, and the dizzy Loya can't even eat. More than once, he wanted to go back to the isolated island and no longer suffer from this crime. But that was an unrealistic expectation, and the mole would not have ordered him to return just because he was seasick. Now these days of torture are finally over. Seeing Loya's appearance, Lieutenant General Mole couldn't help but narrow his eyes, pulled him to the side of the guardrail, pointed to the huge fortress, and said excitedly, "Well, we're here. Take a look. Loya. Lord Mole, I'm not dead yet." Regardless, it was a fact that Loya was finally freed. The warship stopped steadily at the port with a burst of cheers. Loya refused to be carried down by the Navy on a stretcher. The ghost knows if this thing will also be counted as a means of transportation. Step by step, he supported the ladder and walked off the warship. The moment Loya stepped on the ground, he immediately became full of energy. Like a chicken blood, the majestic cold suddenly erupted uncontrollably. Maihu Hansen is back. Ha 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 ha. Because Loya's disease was severe, Mole let him get off the boat first and walked behind Loya. He subconsciously jumped back when Loya's body was cold and returned to the deck. After jumping back to the boat, he suddenly reacted, and he seemed to have made a wrong choice, because the naval officers and men around Loya were shivering, and their frozen faces turned blue and froze in place. "Loya!" Lieutenant General Mole's eyes spit fire, roared, and disappeared from the place abruptly. In the next second, people had appeared in front of Loya. Ah! Loya didn't react a bit. What is the mole doing? Looking at this posture, it seems to be a punch. Hey, the black one in your hand is domineering. In the sudden change of thoughts, Loya did not dodge, because he still did not understand why the mole was attacking him. So, boom. The next moment, he flew upside down, penetrated the outer armor of the warship, and plunged his head into the cabin. The entire warship was swayed by the impact, and the rolled-up waves rushed towards the Navy on the shore. Ah la la, what a lively scene. Not far from the shore, a tall man wearing a white suit vest and dark blue shirt spoke expressionlessly, then stretched out his hands and pointed at the lapped waves. Freezing time. With this sound, his hands quickly turned into two ice jinchuriki column and flew out, grabbing onto the waves. Click, click. The aggressive waves seemed to have pressed the pause button, and the sea water was instantly solidified, forming ice sculptures interlaced with kiba on the coast. The rescued Navy glanced at him in awe, and hurried to help his colleagues on board. That's what the mole said, the boy who wants to join the Navy. The speaker was a sturdy old man. He was wearing a purple suit. He had a purple hedgehog haircut. This person is a former admiral of the Navy, and now the chief instructor of the recruit training camp of the Navy headquarters, Black Wrist, Zepha. The age was still very early, so Zepha did not have a giant robotic arm called a shredder, but simply used a black prosthesis. Kuzan, who had just retracted his hands, heard his words and lazily pulled off the blindfold on his forehead. Yeah, I heard that he can also use the ability to freeze, so I came to see. But it looks like that's all. Don't be blinded by pride, Kuzan. Zephyr looked at the disciple beside him seriously. He is still young. As long as he trains hard, his future achievements are limitless. Ah la la, the teacher has started lecturing again. Kuzan said this casually. Yes, teacher Zephyr. When Loya woke up again, it was already dark. He stared blankly at the unfamiliar ceiling above his head, and then a carp jumped out of the hospital bed. Bastard! Dare to attack me, I'm going to fight you for 300 rounds. With ice crystals spitting out of his mouth, Loya opened Kiba's claws and waved his arms. Be quiet, kid. A loud shout interrupted Loya. He turned his head and saw a purple-haired old man sitting on the hospital bed next to him. The old man folded his arms and stared at him with an unhappy expression. Black wrist Zephyr. Seeing the man's appearance, Loya's eyes narrowed, and he subconsciously wanted to escape from here. This is the boss of the new navy, a vicious element who wants to destroy the new world. But as soon as he opened his legs, he reacted immediately. No, Admiral Aokiji is still in the navy now, and Zephyr's departure from the navy headquarters to form a new navy has not yet happened. You don't need to be afraid of him, do you? Thinking of this, Loya smiled at Zephyr. Excuse me, are you Mr. Zephyr? Humph. Zephyr snorted impatiently and said, you should call me teacher now. Kid Loya. Teacher. Loya tilted her head. First Zephyr. Teacher, what's the situation? When did you accept me as your apprentice? Originally, Loya wanted to continue to address him as Mr., but he was stunned by Zephyr and hurriedly changed his words. The old man didn't accept you as a disciple, but you have joined the recruit camp. According to the regulations, you must call me a teacher. Zephyr briefly explained the reason, and then said, of course, if you want to be me disciple, first of all, you need to strengthen your physique. That kid mole can knock you unconscious for so long with one punch, it seems that you are really weak. Quote. However, there is one sentence Zephyr did not tell Loya, that is, there are not many people in the recruit camp who can call him a teacher. All of them are the best among the naval recruits, which is commonly known as the elite battalion. The general recruits can only call him it is General Zephyr or Instructor Zephyr. Chapter 9 The first day of training, Elite Assessment. First update. The next day, Marine Fodder, Navy Boot Camp. A ray of morning light rippled across the sky, and half a sphere of Yuhi was exposed between the clouds. Today was Loya's first day in the Navy, so he rarely got up early, nibbling while running with a bunch of buns. Anyway, if you don't need money, it's better to eat more. On the way to the playground, the recruits who were in a hurry on the side of the road couldn't help but take a few more glances. This man is delicious. Is he that Loya? I heard that Lieutenant General Mole brought it back. It should be him. Be quiet. Yesterday, he was knocked out by Lieutenant General Mole with a fist and smashed through the armor of the warship. He looks like a monster again. The news of Loya joining the Navy has spread. After all, the goal of the warship that was returned to the factory for refurbishment is too big. At first everyone thought that Lieutenant General Mole met an attack at sea, but only after careful inquiries did they find out the reason for Akatsuki, and Loya's name also spread. Loya doesn't care about their discussions. As a traveler, he still has the illusion of watching 3D movies. At this moment, Loya has also figured out the time point. It is now the 16th year of the Great Voyage Age, in 1516 of the Haiyuan calendar. There is still 1 year before Ace goes to sea, shrinking in Windmill Town to prepare for the sea. I trot all the way to the playground, where a lot of recruits have gathered. While nibbling on the last bun, Loya glanced at his colleagues around him. Bearded, I don't know. Blonde seahorse, I don't know either. The guy with the 2 swords. Still don't know him. After a circle of exploration, Loya swallowed the last mouthful with confidence. It was great, it was all tricks. The dragon suits are good, all the dragon suits mean that he will not encounter any messy things, and he can practice under Zephyr with confidence. Soon, a person dressed as an instructor came to the playground. Seeing that the rank should be a major general, he faced the recruits and shouted loudly, "The 7th team. All assembly." The recruits who gathered slowly when he appeared heard the order and quickly ran together, standing in several columns. Loya didn't know where to stand, but fortunately, the number of recruits was not very neat, and there were still 2 vacancies in the last row, so he hurried over and stood up. There was an opening remark, and then the instructor turned to his right side and stood at attention and salutes. "General Zephyr, the 7th team of the recruit battalion, there should be 53 people, and there are 53 people, please instruct." Loya heard the words and looked. Sure enough, in a corner of the grass in the playground, Zephyr in a purple suit appeared there at an unknown time. The recruits on the playground also saw him at the moment, and the formation was chaotic. "That's General Zephyr, so excited." "Yes, I actually saw General Zephyr with my own eyes." "Hey, what do you think General Zephyr is doing in the boot camp today? Isn't he generally only in charge of elite camp training?" "Probably because of that. That thing, could it be?" Hearing the humming sound in the team, the major general officer's face darkened and roared, "Silence." The chaotic team just now fell silent, and the recruits held their heads high and did not dare to make trouble. At this moment, Zephyr also walked to the front of the team. Looking at the energetic recruits in front of him, he frowned vaguely. Although most of the recruits who can enter the Navy headquarters training are the children of naval officers and have laid a good foundation since childhood, the recruits in recent years are far from being compared with the previous ones in terms of strength and temperament. But now is not the time to express dissatisfaction. Today he will take the time to come to the boot camp, just to see that good seedling and announce the incident by the way. "I'm here today to inform you of something. I think some people already know about it." "That's right. The annual elite assessment of the boot camp is about to start." Whoa. Although there was some speculation, everyone was still very excited when they heard Zephyr officially announce the news. It was an elite battalion, and once they graduated, they were all lieutenants with the lowest rank. They are recruits in the headquarters, but if their strength is not enough, it is not impossible to become a first-class soldier after graduation. Soldiers who don't want to be generals are not good soldiers. As a member of the Navy and Army, who doesn't want to climb to a higher position, and joining the elite battalion is a shortcut, enough to save them years of hard work. Quiet. If there are more critics, everyone will run 100 laps on the playground. The Major General Instructor stood up again to maintain the order, and this time he also took out the unique punishment method of the Army, sitting in a row. All of a sudden, even if someone who can't keep his mouth wants to speak, the guys around him will immediately help him shut up. Zephyr watched this scene expressionlessly, and waited for the team to calm down again before continuing. "However, don't be too happy. The elite assessment is also called the actual combat assessment. In other words, you need to face the enemy, who survived the battle of life and death. Only the best of them can join the elite camp, understand?" "Yes." The voice was weak, and it seemed that many recruits were intimidated by the word, survival, by Zephyr. Seeing this, Zephyr frowned impatiently and shouted again, "I didn't eat breakfast. I ask you, do you understand?" "Understood." This time, his voice was much louder and neater. No matter what he was thinking, he couldn't provoke Zephyr now, or else he wouldn't have good fruit to eat later. How could Zephyr, who had brought countless new recruits, couldn't see what this group of guys was thinking, but he didn't explain, nodded, and turned to leave. But he didn't go too far, just sat on the second floor on the opposite wall, watching the recruit training through the glass window. The actual combat assessment is really so terrifying, to the point of talking about the survival rate. Of course not. Although the Navy is a fighting force, it needs to fight against pirates to the death, but it is not a cruel underground arena. It is only possible to pursue the elite of 100 or 1,000 miles. How can it cause a large number of new recruits to die? The first actual combat assessment of the recruits is generally to send them to the small island where the Navy breeds beasts, hunt those beasts, and judge the pros and cons according to their performance. Moreover, the island is full of surveillance phone bugs, and there is at least one general among the accompanying instructors, so safety can be guaranteed. The purpose of this is to let the recruits see blood. Only after they have really seen the blood, will they change from being a hoax who only knows how to bury their heads and train hard, to a soldier who can fight with pirates, with real swords and real guns. At that time, it will not be an actual combat assessment, and the word, assessment, should be removed. But there is no need to talk too much with the recruits. Once they are guaranteed and lose the fear of death, how can they become independent soldiers? The flowers in the greenhouse can't stand the ravages of wind and rain, and the soldiers who don't know what death can't bear the name of the Navy. The Navy headquarters is not a nursing home. Immediately after Zephyr left, the training began. First, everyone ran 200 laps around the playground. This is the daily routine of the 7 squads of the boot camp. The playground of the boot camp is very large, and it is a full 2 kilometers in a circle. After all, there are 7 teams of recruits here. If it's not big, how many hundreds of people would they need to train in batches? The 7th team that Loya is in is the last team, and only the last team will be dissatisfied with the staff when standing in the queue. But this last position is not divided according to strength, it is simply divided into groups according to the order of joining. Thanks to 9 years of compulsory education, Master Loya has mastered long-distance running skills. He did not take the lead by relying on his physical strength, but maintained the rhythm of 3 steps, 1 exhalation, 3 steps and 1 inhalation, and kept in the middle of the team neither fast nor slow. Dozens of laps ahead, gradually someone behind him overtook him, but he was unmoved, as long as it wasn't the last. At the critical point of 100 laps, a small number of recruits began to fall behind, and were gradually overtaken by him. In the last 50 laps, Loya maintained a constant speed, surpassing one recruit after another, and came to the front of the team. There are not many guys who can maintain the lead at this time, only 2 or 3. Isn't this physical? Loya looked at the guys around him in admiration. After running for so long, his body didn't have any extra movements except for heavy breathing, and he stepped steadily on every step. Chapter 10 Showdown. The Battle of Dignity Between Diners and Chefs. Second. 200 laps. Loya only felt a little sore and swollen in his calf, but he returned to normal after a little exercise. Dragon Slayer sorcerers, apart from their appearance, are actually no longer human. Both strength and endurance are far beyond ordinary people. He paced slowly, shaking his hands and feet from time to time to relax. Not far from the 2nd floor, Zephyr watched this scene through the glass, and his clenched brows could not help but relax a little. Although he was knocked unconscious by a fist of a mole, his defense is not strong, but his endurance is still worthy of praise. Maybe I should arrange a little more physical training for him, otherwise at this intensity, the purpose of training will not be achieved at all. Zephyr thought so, and turned his head to look at Kuzan who had just arrived. Have you been busy lately? You even went to the boot camp to hang around. Ah la la, don't say that, Mr. Zephyr. Kuzan still put on his boring look, leaning against the wall, looking through the glass at Loya who was moving. Marshal Sengoku, let me if you have time to teach that kid to develop the fruit ability, this is also a task. Quote. HMPH, how can you become a strong man only by relying on the fruit's ability? Zephyr snorted dissatisfied, and then stopped looking at him. Isn't that the case with Kazuna? Kuzan didn't say this. He has a good relationship with Zephyr. Zephyr is still his former teacher. It's okay to be lazy at ordinary times. Too much. But speaking of which, according to Mole, his freezing ability focuses more on temperature, not range, and I don't know how much I can teach him. After all, it's not an elemental fruit. That's something you need to consider. Animals are extremely rare, not to mention the legendary creatures like dragons. Although I don't agree that his main energy is spent on developing fruit ability, he can't waste such a good seedlings. Yes, I see. Dragon Fruit Ice Dragon Form. This is the fruit ability that Loya has woven for himself. Before coming to Malenford, Mole repeatedly inquired about his background and fruit ability. While the world doesn't have the rigor of censuses and national ID cards, it's a hassle to keep getting tangled up. So he weaved the background of a tragic orphan in his childhood, working as a handyman on a merchant ship, and was attacked by pirates when he returned. The merchant ship sank, only he fell to the lonely island in a storm, and found a demon on the island fruit. The sea in this world is so vast, the Navy has no way of knowing where the little-known merchant ship Nobita is, and it has no way of knowing which pirate group's flag is a blue-skinned and white-bellied civet cat. Maybe this is the pirate. The flag the regiment uses to hide its identity. There are too many unknowns in everything, so this story is almost seamless. At the end of the run, after about 5 minutes of rest, the Major General Instructor arranged the second exercise, back discus squat. Loya's performance is still praised by Zephyr. Generally, the number of recruits squatting with discus on their backs is between 50 and 100. The number below 50 is the tail of the crane. After graduation, they can only start from the first class. As for Loya, the instructor finally looked impatient, calculating the time to do the next training before letting him stop. During this time, the recruits on the same team counted for Loya, and they did 973 squats. The movement is standard, the speed is average, and there is no problem at all except that the person is a little short of breath. After all, Loya's dragon body has reached 18%, and the increase effect is very powerful. Mole is a powerful lieutenant general who majors in swordsmanship and taijutsu. Being stunned by his fist does not mean that Loya is really weak. The physical training of the boot camp is still very simple for Loya, and soon the morning time has passed. Following the instructor's order, everyone got up from the ground and patted the dust off their hands. 1 hour to eat, and continue training in the afternoon. Now, disband. Eat. Loya's eyes lit up and he couldn't help swallowing. The Dragon Slayer has risen to Tier 2, and his need for food is greater than ever. The buns I ate in the morning were digested cleanly in the middle of the morning, and my stomach was beating gongs and drums for a long time. And even if he was hungry and growling, because of the reason that his magic and physical strength were still abundant, Loya sadly did not feel a trace of fatigue, and even had some energy. This strong sense of contrast made him uncomfortable. Now that he heard that it was time to go to dinner, he jumped into the air with excitement, found the direction of the cafeteria, stepped on the ice cubes and quickly left. After the performance in the morning, the veterans had a good sense of this newly added guy, and they were about to go to dinner together. Loya is still a devil fruit person. The news spread like wildfire and quickly spread in the recruit camp. Although there are countless devil fruits in the sea, and there is one in every corner you don't know, but compared with the population of the entire world, this number is still too small. Their Navy fathers may be able-bodied, but in the boot camp, the appearance of a capable person is still very eye-catching. Looking at Loya's body speeding away, Zephyr asked, "Kuzan, can you move in this way?" In Loya, Zephyr saw the possibility of Master's air dominance. The flying ability of the former Golden Lion and now the captain of the first team of the Whitebeard Pirates, Marco the Phoenix, has made the Navy suffer enough. He desperately hopes to be able to solve this problem. But Kuzan's answer disappointed him. Short distances are fine, long distances are difficult, and the gains outweigh the losses, so it's better to attack directly. Kuzan is a frozen man who has eaten frozen fruit. His body is composed of ice. When attacking, all the ice cubes are split from the body and cannot be created out of thin air. If there is liquid in the air, then he can also use instant touch to freeze these liquids to form ice cubes, but if not, he can only watch. Otherwise, the flying ability of the captain of the first team of the Whitebeard Pirates, Marco, would not be called incomprehensible. It would be a fist to jump on it directly. As a general, the speed is definitely faster than that of Marco. The dialogue between Kuzan and Zephyr is unknown, and he has only one purpose now: eat. Swooping down to the ground, a series of tumblings vented the impact, and Loya rushed to the front of Ms. S in the cafeteria. He swept around first, and immediately knew what lunch was today. 20 servings of white rice and stewed meat, plus a pot of broth for me. 1 pot. Miss S was stunned for a moment, and then she put the spoon on Loya's forehead fiercely. Boy, can you eat so much? If you dare to waste food, my mother won't spare you. Loya stepped back, raised his head and added the gravy at the bottom of the spoon to clean it up. He smiled and said to Ms. S, "Don't worry, I will never waste food. I'm afraid you don't cook enough for me." Huh, my mother has been cooking in Malanford for 30 years, and no one dares to say that. Ms. S threw the spoon aside, replaced it with a clean one, and held it up in front of her chest to pose for a battle stance. You must be the reason why Lieutenant General Mole told us to make 20 more servings of each meal. Then, let's duel. Let's see if the old lady's meals can keep up with your speed. Luoya was instantly appetizing, but after thinking about it, he gave up the beautiful scene. Forget it, I have to train in the afternoon, and I will be punished if I go late. Is that so? Miss S' tone relaxed, and she suddenly recalled that this cafeteria was dedicated to the Marineford Boot Camp and Elite Training Camp. Biloa knew the strictness of the training of recruits. Still familiar. Sister S, since he is going to train in the afternoon, your duel can be played at night. At that time, many recruits would go home for dinner, but there were not many people. The chef who was watching the lively next to him gave the two of them a suggestion. Yesterday, the Molda Lieutenant General sent someone to inform the cafeteria, and they were also very curious about Loya's appetite. Hearing this, both sides were brightened up. Then, duel. The time is tonight. Well, okay. Chapter 11 The showdown begins. The third update, please recommend. How much Loya can eat, I am afraid that even he himself does not know. After all, he can no longer be called a human now, but a humanoid dragon. Thinking about being gluttonous at night. No, overeating. After eating and drinking, Loya is full of expectations for the duel at night. The training in the afternoon was much more complicated than in the morning, because it was the Navy who was going to fight against pirates, so fighting skills such as fighting and swordsmanship also required a lot of practice. Fighting training room. Loya casually banged the sandbags in front of him with a pop sound, using his fists and whipping his legs to fly the sandbags out like cannonballs, and from time to time he sucked the saliva from the corner of his mouth. Seeing this scene, although he was very dissatisfied with Loya's inattentive performance, the Major General did not say much. When he arrived at his position, he had already received some inside information. This Loya's performance in melee combat was very rough, but his overall quality and fruit ability are very strong. The training of the recruit camp has not had much effect on him. In order to balance the crowd, he did not give him a separate small stove. Training. The place he should go is the elite battalion directly managed by Zepha, and those guys called monsters are his kind. Staying in the boot camp now just needs an excuse for promotion and passing the actual combat assessment. Finally, the instructor shouted the dismiss password. The news that Loya was going to duel with Ms. S in the cafeteria was revealed by people familiar with the matter. The recruits in the boot camp were very excited. Every day was a repetitive and busy training. So a group of people surrounded Loya to the cafeteria. Zepha didn't stay in the boot camp in the afternoon. Just now, he went to the Sengoku office to confirm the actual combat assessment of the recruits in a month. When he came home, he passed the boot camp and saw Loya surrounded by the crowd and entering the cafeteria. What are these guys doing? The cafeteria tables were moved by the chefs, leaving only two in the middle. One has cutlery on it, which is for Loya to eat later. The other one is full of ingredients and stoves. Later, Ms. S will make food on the spot to ensure the fairness and openness of the duel. S held her chest with both hands, a spoon in one hand and a spatula in the other, and saw Loya walked in surrounded by her, with a confident smile on her face. It's too late for you to admit defeat, otherwise you won't be able to eat it later, so many people will look embarrassed. Loya walked to the opposite side of her, fastened the napkin on her chest, and her eyes were full of war, stop talking, kiss. Cough cough, let's serve. HMPH, have the guts. A middle-aged chef stood up, came between the two, and held a spoon as a microphone. First of all, welcome to watch this showdown. If anyone is hungry, there is a curry we prepared over there, please take it yourself. Then I announce the rules of the game. Quote. First, during the game, if Luo Yasong has not finished eating one portion of food, he shall not eat the next portion. At the same time, Ms. S cannot make unpalatable food that does not meet her status as a chef. Once there is a foul on both sides, the game will end. Secondly, Ms. S must finish her first serving of food within 5 minutes of the timer, otherwise she will be deemed to admit defeat. Thirdly, the two sides must not obstruct each other in any form and for any reason, otherwise the game will end. The outcome of the game is determined as follows. When Luo Yasong has eaten the last food on the table, if Ms. S' next food has not been cooked, Luo Yasong will win. The remaining food on the table exceeds the food that has already been cooked. On a third, and the number is greater than or equal to 5, or when Luo Yasong can't eat it, then Ms. S wins. Do you have any objection to this? No. Neither do I. Hearing Ms. S' words, Loya gave her a disdainful look. Do you want to choose something simple to do, or you won't be able to keep up? Humph. Arrogant brat. Ms. S countered, not to be outdone. Even if the old lady cooks according to the meals normally served in the cafeteria, you will be the only one who can't keep up. Let's read the newspaper by bike, let's see. Because there was no such creature as a donkey in the world of One Piece in the original book, Loya had to change the vocabulary of this saying. Just make up your mind. Anyway, Ms. S was provoked. She picked up a potato and nodded to the middle-aged chef serving as the referee. Stop talking nonsense, let's start. Okay. The middle-aged chef touched his sweat, then raised the kitchen utensils in his hands seriously. 3, 2, 1. Clang. The competition start. With the crisp symphony of golden iron, the game officially started. S threw out the knife flour, and quickly cut a large basket of potatoes between the knife and the fall. So fast. As expected of Ms. S, this hand speed cannot be achieved without decades of skills. Yes, and you see, those potatoes are evenly sized and even peeled. That's amazing. Listening to the discussions of the explainers next to him, Loya also became serious. He activated the magic in his body, causing a large amount of gastric acid to secrete, and carefully stared at Ms. S' movements. This old woman should not be underestimated. Quote. S skillfully chopped vegetables, turned the pot, and stir-fried them. In less than 4 minutes, she neatly dried and fried the meat of the sea beasts and placed them in front of Loya. The air was filled with a strong aroma of meat, and the onlookers sniffed greedily and their stomachs began to growl. Please use. S finished speaking briefly, and turned back to continue the preparation of the next dish. Oh. Loya picked up a plate of dried sea beast meat, and poured it directly into his mouth without using chopsticks. Before he could chew a few times, a large plate of food was swallowed. Then he picked up the next disc again and repeated the action just now. This kid, you are still hiding at noon. Seeing Loya's bold eating method, Ms. S' eyes narrowed, and she turned the fire to the maximum and accelerated the movements of her hands. Okay. Awesome, on both sides. Yeah, I didn't expect Loya to eat so much. At noon I thought someone was joking. Almost at the moment when Loya ate the last plate, another string of well-sized barbecue was placed in front of him. He and Ms. S looked at each other, and both of them became serious. It's not easy to deal with this kid, this old woman. The game continued to be hot, and the recruits' onlookers were booing and eating curry. Under the influence of Loya, they also had a big appetite. Zephyr stood outside the window, watching the lively scene inside. Several times he wanted to rush in to teach this group of undisciplined boys a lesson, but he held back. In the end, he smiled relaxedly and shook his head. Forget it, let them make trouble. Who hasn't had a young age yet? then turned to leave. The back was pulled very long by the setting sun. The people inside didn't know that General Zepha, the iron-faced instructor, was outside just now. Otherwise, they would have been so excited to cheer for both parties if they had been scattered earlier. Over time, the game has reached a white-hot stage. Loya's speed began to slow down, and Miss S was also sweating profusely. The laborious skill of flipping the pot could be omitted. A bunch of cooks were busy cleaning up the blank dishes on Loya's table, and they all cast their admiring glances at Loya. As a chef, what's more comfortable than having your own food eaten cleanly by your guests? At this moment, Loya gained the respect of all the chefs in the canteen of the recruit camp. This is probably what he didn't expect. Chapter 12: A fruitful victory for Fauna. The night was getting darker and darker, and the stars gradually filled the sky. The sea breeze was very cold, and the patrolling navy shrank his neck, tightened his shirt, and then continued to carry his gun and patrol seriously. The soldiers on duty at the lighthouse were smoking cigarettes and looking in the direction of the recruit camp. Is the cafeteria still serving meals so late? Damn stinky bastard. S propped her knees, gasping for breath, and in front of her, a pot of boiled and bubbling broth was fragrant. After a short rest, she picked up the vegetables on the cutting board and cut them again, because Loya on the opposite table had already eaten the last plate. Loya supported his bulging belly with one hand, and grabbed the edge of the plate with the other hand, and swallowed the food into his stomach with a few clicks. Aha, you. After taking the last bite, she found that Ms. S.'s dish was still in the pot, and Loya, who was about to deliver his victory speech, suddenly closed his mouth. Because a pot of fried rice with fried shrimp in chan-chan sauce was placed in front of him, the golden rice shimmered with an attractive luster. Little devil, want to beat me? It's still early. S snorted disdainfully and continued to add vegetables to the pot. Wait, kid, you're going to lose after this pot of soup is boiled. Yes, I'm going to lose. Loya stared at the shrimp in the bowl seriously. Although the system can quickly convert the food he eats into energy, the speed is limited. Unless you can upgrade now, the food in your stomach needs at least 3 hours to digest. Do you really want to admit defeat? Loya shook his head, driving the thought out of his mind. As a dragon slayer wizard, how can you admit defeat in terms of appetite? Moreover, he also has a system to assist digestion. Losing to an elderly woman with a weak constitution is too embarrassing. While nibbling on the shrimp, Loya digested the food with all his strength. Suddenly, he had an idea. By the way, I'm the dragon slayer. Why do you have to fight recklessly? Loya took a bite of rice with a spoon and stuffed it into his mouth, stood up and walked out, saying vaguely, "Let me go, borrow it, I'll go out for a while." You kid, do you want to spit out the food? Ms. S sneered when she saw his action. To spit, but not to spit food. If you don't believe me, come with me. Che, I'm not stupid. It won't take long for the dishes to be ready, and then you will lose. Hey, you guys, go out and have a look, don't let that kid play tricks. S said that she was smart enough not to waste time, while letting the rest of the chefs stare at Loya. Isn't it? Loya is going to lose. I don't know, let's go and have a look. The recruits rushed out of the cafeteria and went outside with the cooks. I saw Loya bulging his mouth, observing something everywhere in the open space. Is he looking for a place to spit out the food? If you waste food like that, Ms. S will definitely go crazy. The recruits have guessed so. But Loya didn't care. He looked around and chose an open space to stand. There are no buildings around here, and the closest thing is the grass 3 meters away. After choosing the position, he raised his head and put his fists to his mouth. The ice dragons. Roar. Boom. A huge ice tornado rose into the sky and flew straight into the sky while everyone was stunned. Strong cold air was blowing on him, as if he was in the East Island. Loya did vomit, but not food, but magic. In the world of fairy tale, the use of magic requires not only magic power, but also physical strength. The roar of the ice dragon consumes terrifying physical strength. And one of the biggest features of dragon slayers is their resilience, which can be quickly replenished when they are exhausted. Just like the original comic book, no matter how badly he was beaten by the enemy, Natsu could always recover quickly and fight back. If we don't fight with you, we will grind you to death. The way Loya is thinking now is this: by using the roar of the ice dragon to look at the consumption of physical strength, and with the disappearance of physical strength, the food in the stomach will be immediately decomposed with the help of the system and replenished into the body. Snapped. There was a crisp cracking sound from the sky, and everyone looked up, only to see the ice tornado burst open, and countless ice crystals shone bright against the moonlight. This is fireworks. Everyone blinked in confusion, staring blankly at the scene in the sky. After Loya spit out the first ice dragon's roar, he gasped for breath and touched his stomach. Sure enough, the food in his stomach began to digest quickly, and he felt warm all over his body. When he turned around, he saw a group of people froze in place, and there was no obstruction above their heads. He shouted in surprise, "Hey, don't look. The ice cubes will fall down later. Aren't you going to hide?" "Ah, The rest of the people were stunned for a moment, and then looked at the sky. The tiny ice crystals in their sight were getting bigger and bigger, and they were already the size of their heads. "Run, here comes the hail." "Wow." Everyone crowded and ran back to the cafeteria. Sure enough, hail began to fall from the sky. The smallest ice cube was the size of a fist, and the largest was about the size of a table. It fell on the ground and shattered into two halves, and a concave appeared directly on the ground. Pit. Loya said that the ice formed by Dragon Slayer magic is not much weaker than the ice saber that Kuzan condensed against the enemy. "Where's Loya? Why didn't that guy come in?" In the noisy crowd, Ms. S looked around, did not find Loya, and asked with a pot and spoon. "There, he's still out there." The sharp-eyed recruit pointed out the window. Not only did Loya not enter the house, but he didn't even mean to dodge. "Damn it, hurry up and save people." Although the two are in a duel, it does not mean that they can watch each other die. Ms. S roared and was about to rush out, and several sturdy cooks immediately stopped her. "Look, Loya is going to vomit again." S heard the words and looked. Indeed, the blue magic circle appeared on Loya's mouth again. Boom. Another ice tornado flew out and went straight to the sky. This cannon, Loya calculated the direction, not only destroyed most of the ice blocks before, but also opened a path between him and the cafeteria. After doing this, Loya stood up and smiled smugly. He half raised his hand, holding it vacantly. The ice condensed from the blue gathered in the palm of his hand, and slowly grew into a crystal ice umbrella. Holding the umbrella like that, Loya slowly walked towards the cafeteria along the passage opened by the roar of the ice dragon. On both sides of him were ice cubes that fell with a whistling sound, smashing on the ground with a clanging sound, while the clouds on his head were light and windy, with only a tiny bit of ice debris falling on the umbrella as lightly as raindrops. At this time, Loya is like an emperor walking in ice and snow. No frost dares to offend, and all surrender to the left and right. Is that guy really still a recruit? The recruits in the recruit battalion were silent. This strength, this power, even few in the elite battalion, right? Do not. It should be said that there are no elite camps, right? Loya walked back to the cafeteria, threw the umbrella back, and let it be smashed by ice cubes that fell from the sky. Then, Ms. S, let S go on. No need, Ms. S waved her hand. You must have consumed a lot of stamina by using the fruit ability just now, and now the food in your stomach has almost been digested. Cut, are you an animal fruit person? Looking at Loya's shriveled belly, Ms. S also had an answer in her heart. Then, thanks for the hospitality. Loya put her hands together, smiled and lowered her head. Chapter 13 Kuzan's Test. The two talked at night. Oh, win. Yeah, Loya wins. The recruits smiled and hugged excitedly. Although Loya has only been here for a day, he has already won respect through his performance during the day. This honor belongs to the entire recruit group at this moment. Unexpectedly, animal fruits can still be used in this way. Yeah, Loya is so smart that she uses this method to quickly consume food. On the way back to the dormitory, the recruits in groups of 3 or 5 were joking with Loya while joking. He wasn't disgusted with this kind of closeness. It was a joke for a nerd clerk to say what he was doing. See you tomorrow, then, Loya. Well, see you tomorrow. In the dormitory building, the recruits who were sent back to live in the town, Loya signed a letter at the doorman and went upstairs. Pushing the door open, Loya looked at the dormitory room where he didn't know how long he could stay. This is a very simple recruit dormitory, with only 1 bed and 1 chair in the room. The walls are covered with traces of Madara from the passage of time, very simple, but very clean. Ah, sure enough, it is the treatment of recruits. Well, but at least not many people live in 1 room, which is not bad. Touching the switch on the wall, Loya turned on the light. Swish. Suddenly, a whistling sounded in his ear, and a biting chill hit his neck. Luoya, who had no time to turn around, squatted down quickly, opened his left hand and quickly formed a long sword of ice, and stabbed it in reverse. This counterattack was so fast, but just at the moment when Loya felt a little relieved, he was kicked in the stomach, the ice sword in his hand was released, and his body flew out, hitting the wall with a thud. Before he could confirm the extent of his injury, Loya, who was still attached to the wall, clenched his fist violently with his right hand and hit the palm of his left hand. Because the murderous intent was coming straight at him, he had goosebumps all over his body. The coffin of ice. Click, click. As if opening the gate, endless cold air gushes out from the palm of the hand, quickly forming a large square block of ice. In the future, people will freeze in it, and the cold killing intent will also disappear. Woo! Seeing this, Loya finally relaxed, staggered under his feet, and took in the cool air to cover his ribs. Damn, this is the Navy headquarters. Killers are here to kill. He looked up at the ice cube in front of him, and suddenly his eyes widened. There was nothing in the ice cube. Are you looking for me? The low baritone sounded, and Loya turned his head sharply, then froze for a moment. Admiral Aokiji, why are you here? The person who came was wearing a white suit, with a green blindfold on his forehead, and an explosive hairstyle. He was one of the 3 current admirals of the Navy, Aokiji. Seeing the green pheasant, Luoya's nervousness finally let go. In any case, this general who believes in lazy justice will not kill himself if there is no necessary reason. And what have you done? Don't do anything. Seeing Loya's relaxed look, Kuzan couldn't help but be a little curious. Hey, boy, are you so relaxed? If I attack you immediately, I will die. Hearing this, Loya turned over Byakugan, sat on the ground and lowered his head and pulled off his shirt to check the injury. You are an admiral, even if you don't attack me, I will die. Anyway, it's all dead, why not relax? You brat. Kuzan was choked for a while, and he didn't know what to say for a while, but this kind of lazy and effortless appearance was quite to his taste. Pulling out a jar of medicine from Kabuto, Kuzan threw it to Loya. Take it, I saved my strength just now. With your physique, you should have only suffered a slight injury. Snapped. Loya took the jar and shook it with a smile, thank you. After Loya finished taking the medicine, Kuzan leaned on the back of the chair and looked at him condescendingly. Hey, aren't you curious why I attacked you? I was curious at first, but when I thought about the former senior Zephyr coming to the recruit camp this morning, I was not curious. Loya took out the bandage and wrapped it around himself, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Oh, tell me what you think. First of all, the former General Zephyr is an instructor of the elite battalion, and our instructors should inform us about the actual combat training, but he is here. You must know that even many people in the new camp have never seen him before. Isn't this unusual? To say the reason, it must be because of my joining. Quote. After a pause, seeing Kuzan's expressionless face, Loya continued to explain. Then, the ability used by my ice dragon form is also frozen, which is exactly the same as your frozen fruit, General Aokiji. So when you appeared, I understood that General Zephyr was optimistic about me and wanted to pull me into the elite camp. And you are here to test me. After all, there is only 1 month left for the actual combat assessment. The time is about to start. You need to know what level of my actual combat strength is. Hey, what a wonderful inference. Kuzan clapped lazily. But you missed one thing. I'm not just here to test you. You have to follow me to learn and develop fruit abilities. After all, it's about freezing I am most familiar with this aspect. Quote. Hearing this, Loya looked at Kuzan in shock. With your character, you would accept such a troublesome task. Boy, you know what you're saying is rude. Having said that, Kuzan has no interest in continuing to chat. Since Loya is very clear in his heart, then there will be some time to contact him in the future. Then, that's it. From tomorrow onwards, you will wait for me in the cafeteria after training in the evening. If I am not available, you will be notified in advance. Yes, I'm going to trouble Mr. Kuzan. Kuzan, who opened the door, turned back. Don't call me teacher. Your teacher is only Teacher Zephyr, and I'm only responsible for helping you develop your fruit ability. Okay, Mr. Kuzan. Mr. Kuzan, walk slowly. Kuzan frowned with a cross on his forehead and flicked his fingers. Freezing time. Then he closed the door and left, leaving Loya, who was frozen into an ice sculpture, stiff in place. Going downstairs, a strong figure appeared in the corner. Kuzan was taken aback for a moment, and Kabuto walked over with both hands. La, Teacher Zephyr, I will send you the report tomorrow, so why don't you go to bed now? Zephyr crossed his arms and glanced at the dormitory behind him. If a guy throws ice cubes on your roof in the middle of the night, will you be able to sleep? Well, it's not because you didn't stop him from having a boring duel with Ms. S, or he wouldn't have to use the fruit ability to speed up digestion. After Kuzan said that, he regretted a little, but as expected, Zephyr looked at him with a displeased expression. The two were silent for a while, and Kuzan coughed and broke the silence. Since you are here, let me tell you about the test results. Teacher, your guess is right. Although this kid has a good reaction speed and physique, he has absolutely no experience in dealing with it and has no rules. He is more like a beast fighting by instinct. HMPH, the footsteps are frivolous, and the eyes are dull. You can see this at a glance. Zephyr snorted, indicating that he knew it. So, what is the fruit's ability? Hearing this, Kuzan became serious and nodded seriously. It's very strong. That cold air can no longer be explained clearly, but there are other special powers in it. I suspect that it is the power of dragons. If I hadn't used a shave to dodge a frozen move, I'm afraid it would have taken a lot of effort to break free. However, his use is as rough as a fight, and even the speed of the release can't hide the fact. Is that so? Zephyr lowered his head and meditated, and after a while, he said to Kuzan, you should have more snacks for the fruit, and I will discuss with Sengoku about reducing your tasks when you go out. I have a feeling that this sea there will be chaos soon, and until then, the more high-end combat power the Navy has, the better. Quote. La, that's really nice. Should I say thank you, Mr. Zephyr? Chapter 14 Punishment and Countermeasures. After a night of sleep, the injury from last night was almost healed. Loya jumped up from the bed, pushed open the window, and stretched out in front of Yuhi's bright sun. Ah, another good day. Hey, upstairs, do you know that there are people living downstairs, and the water has been leaking all night? At this time, Loya heard the sound, followed the sound and looked down, and saw a guy in a recruit t-shirt brushing Kobo while shouting at himself. Loya turned his head, and there was only a small half of the ice cubes left in the ice coffin. Because of the injury, he slept too fast last night and didn't remove the ice cubes. The ice coffin slowly melted, and the whole room was covered in water stains. What's the matter? The ice cubes created by this life-saving lore ability melted overnight. Sorry, I'll clean up the water now. Loya said apologetically to the other party while thinking, then came to the ice cube and looked at the window to estimate the distance. Yoshi, this is the angle. Shoot hard. Ouch. Huh. The ice cubes of about 1 cubic meter rushed out of the window, drew arcs in the air, and fell into the artificial lake facing the dormitory with a thud, smashing water splashes more than 3 meters high. On the path beside the lake, the recruits who were walking and eating breakfast were splashed by the sudden splash of water, and the food in their hands also filled the lake. Asshole. Who did it? Come out, Uncle promises not to kill you. No, it caused trouble. Listening to the indignant denunciations from the masses by the lake, Loya shrank his head, quietly closed the window, and closed the curtains. Greeting the recruits who were familiar all the way, Loya came to the recruit camp. Standing in the queue, the Major General's instructor appeared with a black face. Last night, there was a hailstorm in Malanford, the area was around the recruit camp, and several houses were smashed. More than 10 patrolling soldiers were injured. It also knocked out Marshal Sengoku's goat. Who are you talking about? Did it? The recruits of the 7th team were stunned for a moment, and then they shouted in Schadenfreude, report the instructor. Loya did it. Very good, Loya. Yes. DQ. Standing outside the queue, Loya was also confused. I'm going, I still understand why I smashed Marshal Sengoku's goat into a stun. He had forgotten that in order to pretend last night, his second ice dragon's roar was launched diagonally, and that direction was exactly the position of the main body of the Malanford fortress. The Major General instructor walked up to Loya with a dark face and said, did you do it? Instructor, do you believe me when I said this was a misunderstanding? Loya explained embarrassingly with her face folded. The result of Loya's punishment came down very quickly. After consideration by Zepha, the chief instructor of the recruit battalion, after he had just arrived in Malanford, Marshal Sengoku would not pursue it, so he was given a lighter punishment. You will be punished for cleaning the toilet for 1 month, and the safety regulations will be copied 1,000 times within today. Anyway, the intensity of recruit training has little effect on Loya. Find him something to do and don't let him be idle and cause trouble. Otherwise, according to this trend, there will be headaches in the future. The Major General's instructor also understood this, and he didn't want him to participate in the training, and just kicked him away to sweep the toilet. Wearing an apron and holding a mop, Loya leaned against the toilet and sighed helplessly. I said it was a misunderstanding. The Major General officer who came to the toilet saw this scene and shouted with a dark face, don't try to be lazy. Go and clean the toilet. The recruit next to him snickered and murmured. Before entering the toilet, he covered his feet with mud on purpose, and after walking in, he squeezed his throat pretentiously. Oops, sorry Loya, I forgot you just cleaned this place. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll be done right away. Looking at these apparently intentional guys, Loya didn't speak, just quietly tapped the floor with his toes to dissipate the cold air, and the wet ground immediately condensed, forming a thin layer of ice. Next second. Ouch. Hey, don't pee on me. Sorry instructor, I didn't mean to. Hearing the lively noise in the toilet, Loya proudly lifted the mop and went to the toilet on the next floor. Can I use this to develop a trick that makes people slip? I remember that Gray had such a trick in 300 Trolls. Is it called the ice carpet or the frozen earth? Copying the safety regulations 1,000 times was the easiest for Roha. He first found dozens of pens, and fixed rows of notebooks side by side. Then used the ice modeling magic to create a device similar to a sieve machine, and place each pen on it according to the interval of the book. And he grabbed the pen at the front and put it on the shelf, so writing one word was equivalent to writing dozens of words. Swish, scrupulously wrote, and the safety regulations of a few hundred words were completed in 2 hours. Loya ran to bring the book full of safety regulations to the instructor. The Major General instructor turned over the book and said in disbelief, What? You finished it so quickly. Think back to when you were fined for copying the safety regulations, and fighting until dawn. You are here to slap your face. Humph, of course, who called me a genius? Although the instructor was skeptical, he didn't know what method Loya used to finish the transcription so quickly. Well, according to the agreement, you can rest after cleaning the toilet today. Yes, thank you, instructor. After Loya left, the instructor brought the safety regulations written by Loya to Zepha. Zepha took the book that Loya copied, and was extremely surprised, so fast. How long did it take him? The instructor said helplessly. Accurately, 1 hour and 47 minutes. I'm sure he cheated, but I can't find any clues. Zepha nodded and flipped through the book. Suddenly, he picked up a copy he had read before, flipped it over, and then slammed his fist on the table. His face darkened. Loya. This sneaky bastard. The instructor didn't know what happened, and quickly asked, General Zepha, what happened? Taking a deep breath and calming down, Zepha pointed to the 2 notebooks and said, look carefully, here and here, there is a typo in these 2 positions. After editing, even the line curvature is the same. The Major General instructor is not a fool. After Zepha's reminder, he immediately understood, biting Kiba and saying, this bastard dares to cheat. I'll go find him. He also knows Loya's ability to freeze. As long as it is used well, it is not a problem to copy dozens of books at the same time. No need. Zepha stopped him and put the notebooks next to them. You didn't find the problem immediately, presumably now that he has destroyed all the evidence. I'm afraid there won't be any water stains in that room. Stay, you go to him and there is no reason to punish him without evidence. Speaking of this, Zepha pulled out a smile. This bastard is really interesting. Loya, who was in a happy mood, chewed on the meat cock and waved goodbye to his recruit partner. As soon as he walked out the door, he saw the figure of General Kuzan. He nibbled the meat clean one by one, threw the bones in the trash can, and trotted over quickly. Mr. Kuzan, here I am. Leaning against the wall, Kuzan, who was sleeping with a blindfold covering his eyes, heard the sound, pushed up the blindfold, and glanced at Loya sleepily. Oh, you're here. Let's go then. Okay, Mr. Kuzan. Where are we going, Mr. Kuzan? Don't call me teacher. Freeze time. Chapter 15 Kuzan's Small Thoughts, The Challenge of Elite Camp. This is the big square in front of the Marineford Fortress. A small square next to it. Not far from boot camp, but enough range for 2 boot camps. Ordinary recruits will not come here except for combat training. Only those guys in the elite battalion who are hailed as monsters by the recruits will train here every day. Because their strength is already very strong, the narrow field will only limit their performance. When I came to the small square, there were still several guys dressed as recruits who were training, or fighting one-on-one, or meditating cross-legged, with a samurai sword on his knee. The most striking thing is that the height is probably a big man about 4 meters is doing a squat with an iron block bigger than him. Kuzan. General, who are they? Originally wanted to call the teacher, but before the frost spread on Kuzan's body, Roha wisely chose to change his words. Hearing Loya's words, Kuzan retracted his actions and explained, oh, you said them, they are the guys from this elite camp. Elite camp. Loya repeated the name. As the name suggests, there are only elites in the elite camp, and each of them is a strong choice from countless navies. Graduated from the elite camp, the minimum achievement is also a colonel. Corresponding to the treatment is the extremely difficult graduation assessment, but so far, no one has failed to graduate. With the presence of the former general, the iron-faced instructor, Heiwei Zepha, the possibility of passing through improper means and water can be ruled out. Therefore, the guys who enter the elite battalion will basically be the backbone of the Navy in the future. It is not impossible to even take over the flag of the general. You must know that generals like Kuzan, Sakazuki, and Kizaru all graduated from here. Seeing the figure of Kuzan, the members of the elite camp who were training stopped and leaned over, and gave a neat salute. General Aokiji. Well, you guys continue. I just brought a kid over to train. Kuzan said listlessly, pointing to Loya beside him. Hearing this, Loya froze in her heart and looked at him in disbelief. Hold the grass. This guy is so treacherous, isn't he just disgusting you? Is it necessary to make trouble for me so painstakingly? As an admiral with a high prestige, are you sure you need to explain why to these new recruits? Isn't it better to be cold? This hole is too obvious. Sure enough, when they heard Kuzan's words, the eyes of several people were locked on Loya, and the big man as strong as a bull glared at him fiercely. Is this the kid? Seeing this, Kuzan's mouth quietly pulled out a smile, and then immediately disappeared. Hey. Yes, there is no way. His fruit ability has a relatively large range, and it can only be used here. You bastard, you even disclosed my information to them. Luoya was angry, but he immediately thought about it and said cheerfully. Yeah, that's why Mr. Kuzan brought me here and said that he wanted to teach me to develop the ability of devil fruit. Forgive my 24-year-old guy for being so cute. Anyway, I'm not afraid of shame with a baby face. Since you are not benevolent, don't blame me for being unjust. Come on, hurt each other. You actually called General Qingzi's name. Wait, the big man said viciously, suddenly stunned, and then a group of people shouted. Old teacher. Kuzan's eyes twitched, feeling as uncomfortable as eating flies. Facing their surprised, puzzled, and even disappointed eyes, he explained helplessly, I didn't accept him as an apprentice, I just taught him a little bit. That's all. Well, but Mr. Kuzan, there is a saying, what you can't teach you, that's your teacher. For example, if I can't write, someone will teach me, even if he's just a boatman, he is my teacher. I don't know how to cook, the little girl who sells flowers taught me how to cook, and she is my teacher. Not just me, but everyone, even as humans. We learn from nature to make a fire, learn to use tools, and learn to build houses. Nature is our human teacher. So, Mr. Kuzan, you taught me to develop the ability to develop fruit, and you are also my teacher. Right, Mr. Kuzan. Loya kept talking from teacher to teacher, blinding a group of people. Kuzan touched the blindfold on his forehead and asked Loya, where did you hear this sentence? Well, it should be Donghai. I remember we met Barati, the restaurant on the sea, before that. Is it Donghai? I see. After the incident, Admiral Aokiji, one of the 3 naval admirals, took the initiative to apply for a trip to the East China Sea. For 3 consecutive months, the entire East China Sea was disturbed. Hearing that Kuzan had no objection, the big man's eyes were sore, and his nose and tears kept flowing down. Woo. General Aokiji, you've even accepted an apprentice. Hey, it's disgusting for you to cry like this when you're such a big man. Loya complained in his heart. Suddenly, he stopped crying and looked at Loya, his eyes full of anger and stubbornness. Little devil, let's have a showdown. Let me see what you can do to make General Qingzi accept you as a disciple. Ah. Seeing this scene, Aokiji only felt relieved for a while, and finally got to the point. Today's plan was almost destroyed, but fortunately, Aldo is still so easy to be fooled. Aludo is the name of this little giant of 4.3 meters. When he was in the boot camp, he always admired the 3 admirals of the Navy who also walked out of the boot camp. After that, because Kuzan rescued him, he wanted to worship Kuzan as a division. But Kuzan, who hated trouble and was lazy, never agreed. Today, Kuzan appeared in front of him again, and he even accepted his disciples. He couldn't help it and challenged Loya. Loya looked at him calmly, then turned his head and pulled the corner of Rakuzan's clothes, squinting his eyes and asking with his eyes, is this your purpose? Kuzan replied with a look of, what do you want to ask? I don't understand, should I ask? This time, the headache is finally Loya. Looking at Arudo's expression, it is obvious that he is taking this victory very seriously. Loya, you can try it. Anyway, you will join the elite camp in a month. It's good to have a good relationship with your companions first. Kuzan added next to him. Hey, I am tired. Loya shook his head and agreed. Then, let me be the referee. The rule is that there are no rules, as long as you don't make a dead hand. Kuzan raised his hand and declared, "Of course, there is no one more suitable to be a referee than him here, and naturally no one will object." "What do you mean as long as you don't kill me? You want me to be beaten, don't you?" Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish and despised him. Aludo on the opposite side has chosen his position. Like a bull, his nostrils are spewing Jinchuriki column. "Come on, Loya, I want you to know that the weak are not qualified to stand beside General Qingzi. Even if General Qingzi accepts you as a disciple, you will not win my approval." In the face of this situation, Loya spread his hands. "What can I do? I am also very desperate." Chapter 16 Iron Nugget Master, Arudo. Both ready, 3, 2, 1. Start. As Kuzan's voice fell, Aldo kicked his footsteps, his huge body rolled up and whistled, and slammed straight into Loya. "Fly out, kid. This guy should be specializing in physical art. Tisk, but don't have some strange fruit ability." To meet Aldo head-on, Roha thought, leaning forward with his left foot, also posing for a collision. A layer of ice armor quickly covered his body, shining in the evening sun. The opponent's speed is very fast, although it is not enough to shave, but he is not sure to dodge, and may even be attacked by the long-handed Aldo while dodging. So he chose to resist. Putting on the appearance of a collision, Loya roared and slammed into it. Kuzan next to him let out a sigh and looked at Loya, who rushed out in surprise. "Does this guy have that much strength? This kid is finished." Comparing strength with Aldo, this kid has a lot of ideas. The other two members of the elite battalion thought silently, preparing to see how far Loya would be knocked out. Bang! As if two locomotives collided, a deafening crash sounded in the field. A group of people looked at the black shadow that flew out in surprise. It turned out to be Aldo. But Aludo flew out not far, adjusted his posture in just one breath, turned over and landed on the ground. Different from the surprise of the others, Aludo was not at all surprised at the moment. The opponent's strength is not as great as his own. This is the conclusion drawn from a brief encounter with Arudo. Although Loya's strength is indeed great, it is indeed not comparable to such a gifted physique master. As for why it was him who was knocked out, Aruba looked at the set of ice armor on the opponent's body. At the moment of the collision, the ice cone that extended from it was inserted into the ground, and Loya's whole person was instantly fixed in place. The impact is stronger than himself. Just like the lock rod on the catapult, after the catapult is ejected, it needs to stop suddenly, in order to maximize the inertia into the power of the stone. But it is difficult to do this, and the lateral pulling force produced by the extremely rapid abrupt stop alone is not for ordinary people to withstand. The airflow spread out on the field, and Loya rubbed his shoulders and sucked in the cool air. He felt as if he had hit an iron plate, and the anti-shock force without a trace of moisture fell on him, and his chest felt stuffy for a while. After the event, he pulled out the ice spear that had been deeply inserted into the ground. It was the prop used to stop the movement instantly, and he stared at Aldo. "This guy, did you just use an iron block from the Navy's 6th form? It has such an effect." Waving the sharp ice Jinchuriki column in his hand, Loya squatted slightly, exerted force on his feet, and stabbed the ice Jinchuriki column straight at Aldo. The roar of the ice dragon and the wing attack of the ice dragon are too long to be used in this kind of close combat. Seeing Roha's movements, Aldo's hands became pitch black, and the strange energy field made Roha look sideways slightly. Armament hockey. Jingle. The crisp symphony of gold and iron sounded. The ice Jinchuriki column was smashed into two pieces by Aludo's fist. Loya released the broken ice Jinchuriki column in his hand without looking at it, and avoided Uru with a short body. More whip legs that follow. At the same time, the right hand lit up with a dark blue light and roared, "Ice Dragon's Iron Fist." Slap. But this swift counterattack was blocked by Aldo's broad palm. Although his size is huge, his counterattack is not slow, and that layer of black energy gives him the confidence to face any fruit ability. But this time he miscalculated. Loya is not a devil fruit ability. And the iron fist of the ice dragon is different from the iron fist of the fire dragon of Natsu. It does not burst out to hurt the enemy when it hits, but turns into a drill bit, which gets into the opponent's body to freeze when it touches. Injuries the enemy inside but not outside. The mistake in intelligence made Arudo suffer severely. The biting chill was not blocked by armament hockey, but gradually spread along his bones. He felt that his blood was starting to congeal, making his body become numb. Stiff. While your illness is killing you, the days of the desert island hunter made Loya understand this truth deeply. With the inertia of his fists, Loya propped up on Aldo's thighs, hung upside down, kicked his head, and the streamer blew on his feet proved that this attack was still the skill of the dragon slayer. The claws of the ice dragon. Boom. With one kick, Aldo's huge body was kicked out by Loya. Kuzan, who was watching the battle from a distance, nodded and commented, "It's a good counterattack, although there are many loopholes in the moves and there are no rules at all, but they can seize the moment when Aldo is stiff and use the moves without hesitation. This is really the smell like a beast." The two who had fought before looked at him in shock. Could it be that Aldo will lose? General Aokiji. Well, half a catty 8 tails. The dust was scattered by a large hand. Aludo pushed away the bricks and stones on his body and stood up from the broken wall. He rubbed his numb arm, there was a bruise on his forehead, and grinned, "Ha ha, stinky brat. Didn't you eat dinner? No matter how many times you hit me with an attack like this, I won't get hurt." Indeed, half a pound. The members of the elite group watched this scene silently at the moment. Arudo's most powerful weapon is not his strength comparable to that of a giant, nor is he armament hockey who is slightly successful, but the 6-type navy iron that has been cultivated to ultimate. As for the 6 naval styles, the members of the elite regiment have all studied, but due to the influence of time, energy and even talent, they often choose only one or several types of special studies. Aludo is an iron nugget that specializes in research. Since joining the elite camp 2 years ago, Aludo, who was the weakest in the camp at that time, only practiced this trick with his passion and talent for iron blocks. After 2 years, he was already among the strongest in the elite camp. One of his defenses, let alone the members of the same year, can't break through the weaker admirals, and is known as the most talented defense master. Since Loya's attack can't break the defense, then the current situation on the field is really hard to say. At this moment, Roha is also amazed. He himself knows the strength of the Ice Dragon Slayer magic. In addition to the general destructive power, the cold air that is extremely cold entering the enemy's body is the main means, and it is extremely difficult to defend. The big man in front of him, I am afraid that even his body has become an iron plate. Otherwise he will not be able to resist the cold erosion of the Dragon Slayer magic, and he should have fallen down with blue lips early. Thinking at this point, Loya put out 12 points of energy. Such a qualified sandbag, where to find it next time? Taking a slight breath, a dazzling blue light appeared on his hand again, and he slammed it on the ground. This time, it was not the iron fist of the ice dragon, but Ice Make Ice Field. With Loya's movements, the terrifying cold air rushed in all directions along the ground, and immediately condensed into a thick layer of ice wherever it went. Kuzanban watched the fun, smacking his lips when he saw this, and jumped on the shelf beside him. After swiping twice, the duo also stood beside him. The guy over there holding the samurai sword plunged the sword straight into the ground, with his toes on the hilt to avoid the freezing. The inexplicable power wrapped around the sword, making the cold air not close. Because Arudo was too close, his feet were directly frozen. But this is not dragon-slaying magic, it's just a simple ice shape. The hardness of the ice cubes is limited. With a little effort, the ice cubes on his feet are freed by him. Little devil, do you want to have a snowball fight? Hearing Aldo's provocation, Loya shook his head calmly and asked, "Big man, can you skate?" "What?" Aludo's eyes shrank, and he looked at Loya who had rushed to the front in disbelief. The blue light condensed on his fist, which reminded him of the pain when the cold energy entered his body. "Why so fast?" Boom. Loya punched out a fist, and then hooked his feet, and the claws hit the combo. At this time, Arudo realized that he could not stand firmly on the ice, and he easily lost his center of gravity, and was shaky for a while by Loya's set of attacks. Loya stepped on ice skates on his feet, like a monkey who molested a bear, spinning and jumping beside Aludo. Damn brat, don't be too complacent. Once again hit in the nose by a fist, Aldo roared, stepped on it hard, and sunk his feet directly into the ice, and opened his hands to catch Loya's attack. Loya is not surprised by this. If he really wants to melee 10 people, he may not be the opponent's opponent. It is normal for his attack to be caught. I'm going to beat you up. Arudo roared and punched down. Armament hockey showed icy killing intent in the cold wind. Loya bit Kiba, and the ice armor on his body became a little thicker. Puff. Aldo's fist was very heavy, and Loya only felt that his shoulders instantly lost consciousness, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Biting the Kiba pass, Loya fell down with this force, and slammed a fist on the instep of Aldo. The iron fist of the ice dragon. What he is waiting for is that Aludo takes the initiative to step his foot into the ice surface. As long as he does so, he will use dragon-slaying magic to reinforce the ice cubes. With the strength shown by Aludo when he hits before, the probability of him breaking free is infinitely close. At 0. Chapter 17 Victory. New way to upgrade. Kuzan naturally saw Loya's action. He recalled that Loya used that move last night, and couldn't help expressing sympathy for Aldo. Although he didn't know the difference between the ice modeling magic and the ice dragon slaying magic, he was sure. As far as the freezing effect is concerned, Loya is no longer weaker than him. Where are you fighting, boy? Aldo laughed at Loya, ready to kick Loya away with one kick. But when he pulled it hard, he found that the ice cubes this time were completely different from just now. With this force, he almost stumbled. What? Aludo's eyes widened, looking at his frozen feet. The ice cubes that were able to break free just now turned out to be as hard as steel. Loya coughed softly, spit out the congestion in his lungs, stepped on the ice blade made of ice, and circled around Arudo with his hands behind his back, making fun of him. Yo, big man, come and beat me. I've been itchy lately, and I really need to be beaten. Damn. Arudo's calf turned black. That was because he used armament hockey to harden his body. Although the strength was increased after using domineering, but Aludo still couldn't move except for the pain in his feet, and then he gave up the idea and raised his fist and slammed it down hard. Even if it's steel, my fist will smash it. Yeah, but I won't give you the chance. Loya smiled and smashed the palm of his hand. A streak of ice Jinchuriki column seemed to have life, circling through his armpit, tying up Aldo's upper body. In order to prevent him from breaking free, Loya made a hook, kicked on it and reinforced it with Dragon Slayer magic. After doing this, he slid in front of Aludo and spread his hands. You are stronger than me, your moves are so flexible, you can also use armament hockey, and you are definitely not your opponent with my rogue punches. Rely on your brain, you are so stupid, I can't bear it if you don't play with you. In the end, Aludo reluctantly conceded defeat. Kuzan's face was as black as carbons, but he couldn't say much, so he proudly announced that Loya had won. After the game, the duo and Aludo left the training ground. The former is to inform their companions that a powerful guy is going to join the elite camp, while the latter is simply beaten and unhappy. Only that swordsman remained in the training ground, sitting down with his knees crossed and meditating. Although he was very upset, Kuzan still performed his duties as agreed and explained to Loya. The ability of freezing seems to be powerful, but its attack on points is far inferior to other natural abilities. For example, the lava of a kainu will be burned if you get too close, but ice is not good. If you want to freeze the enemy, you can only directly sexual contact only covers a wide area. So it is more of a support and field control effect. I also know your ability. The focus is on freezing, which is completely different from the large area attack of the nature department, so your next training it is to strengthen the ability in this area, to develop their own moves, and not to just imitate me and use force to make tricks. Quote. Kuzan said, turning his hand into an ice sculpture and moving his fingers. And the most important point, your freezing ability is a form of addition, not a frozen human. You can't be immune to ordinary attacks. I suggest you strengthen the one you just used. The defensive power of the ice armor should be focused on the vital position. Don't directly form the armor all over the body, it must be very stamina to do so. Loya nodded and muttered in his heart, it does consume a lot of physical strength. The consumption of 500 mana in 1 minute is enough for me to punch 3 times. Okay, mainly these 2 points. Now let's discuss your understanding of the application of freezing ability in actual combat. It was getting dark, and the soldiers who had been busy all day gradually returned to the dormitory to rest, and the huge naval headquarters slowly became quiet. The process of developing fruit ability is not the kind of vigorous miracles. On the contrary, it requires more quiet thinking and exploration. Kuzan brought him here, not really because the space was big enough, but because it was quiet enough. As for the little thought just now, Kuzan would never admit it. After several hours of discussions and demonstrations, Loya was stunned. Many doubts and ideas were resolved and corrected, and many misunderstandings entered when using the ice modeling magic were also pointed out one by one, and at the same time, ways of improvement were considered. Dragon slaying magic can only rely on the system, which is not Kuzan's ability. Seeing Loya's contemplative look, Kuzan patted his pants and stood up, looking up at the moonlight. La, it's so late. Then, I'll go back first, and we'll meet here tomorrow if nothing else happens. Loya quickly stood up, bent over and bowed. Yes, please walk slowly, Mr. Kuzan. Don't call me teacher. Kuzan waved his hand impatiently, put his hands in kabuto and walked away slowly. Watching Kuzan walk away, Loya turned and left. Well, Admiral Kuzan is indeed a good fit to be an admiral. At this time, Loya remembered the discussions of netizens about Kuzan when watching anime in the previous life. Because of the subsequent plot, everyone expressed 12 points of confusion towards Kuzan. But so what? Loya believes that Kuzan is definitely a good person. Even if he was afraid of trouble, he did not perfunctory about what he promised, and taught himself seriously. Looking at people from habit, Loya doesn't believe that Kuzan is really turning black. After cleaning up his personal hygiene, Loya lay on the bed, smelling the meat and soon fell asleep. S was kind to him. Knowing that he was hungry soon, she prepared a pot of big meat bones and put it at his door, covered with a lid for insulation and a note. The next day, Loya got up to freshen up and hurried to the training camp. Just kidding, General Zepha personally ordered the punishment to clean the toilet for a month. Carrying a mop and a bucket, Loya hummed a song while cleaning the toilet. The Major General instructor of the 7th team walked in and heard Loya's singing, and couldn't help but ask amusingly, Loya, what's so fun about cleaning the toilet? You don't like this job, right? Ah, ha ha ha. Cut, the child is not a fish and knows the joy of a fish. Loya snorted disdainfully and handed the mop to his feet. Please let me, be careful of slipping. Although he didn't understand what Loya's words meant, the instructor didn't care, remembering that he had been urinated on his pants and went back to change his clothes yesterday, so he hurriedly opened the door of the compartment and hid in. There is of course a reason why Loya is so happy. Because just yesterday, he discovered a good way to quickly increase his energy value. Silent Goldfinger opened the panel, and Luoya looked at it happily. Name, Christopher Loya. Energy stage, 2nd order 0 layer. Energy value, 124 hundredths. Mana, 3,500. Mana recovery speed, 300 per minute. In one day, his energy value increased by a full 100 points. The food in the naval cafeteria did not increase the energy value much. Even with Ms. S' elaborate cooking and the showdown at night, the energy value only increased by 20 points. Most of the 100 points of energy came from his duel with Aldo, and the rest came from his discussions with Kuzan. Loya has a guess about this. When the energy stage reaches the second layer, the way to increase is no longer too dependent on energy intake, or that the dragon's body has reached a critical point, and more needs his understanding of himself, that is, commonly known as practice can improve. This kind of training can be a run, a duel, or a long talk. Anyway, as long as it is helpful for improving strength, depending on the situation, you will get a high amount of energy. When the body of the dragon reaches 20%, I am afraid that eating will not increase the energy value. Loya sighed. Although he found a new way to be promoted, he still misses the days when he could be promoted by eating, sleeping, and playing doo-doo. Chapter 18 Practice and the Injured Mole. Don't lift your feet too high, fight back now. It's best to squat down and run away at this time. Are you faster than me? There are too many redundant actions. You must be quick to activate your moves. Be concise. In the small square, the two figures were fighting fiercely, and there was a dull sound of crashing and breaking in the air from time to time. Ice splashed all over the square and shot out like bullets. A thick layer of ice covered the slate and walls, decorating the place like a snowfield. Loya squatted down according to the reminder, and quickly closed his slightly opened hands to maintain balance, and the cold began to gather. Ice make. Bang. Kuzan kicked out and opened Loya's hand, preventing him from using his abilities. Then, using the force of the waist and abdomen, centering on the foot that serves as the support of the Jinchuriki column, after spinning a circle, he kicked Loya's forehead sideways and kicked him out. If the move is broken, you need to respond immediately. Are you waiting to die? Kuzan shouted at the dusty wall. At this time, a huge energy shot straight into the sky, and looking through the smoke, two wings formed by ice crystals loomed. Ice Dragon's Wing Strike. Before the ice wing arrived, the icy cold wind was already blowing towards the face, and even the dust was frozen in place along the way, full of momentum but quiet like a secluded domain. Facing this move, Kuzan nodded in approval. Faced with an enemy whose speed is higher than himself, if you can't hit point to point, a wide area attack is indeed a good choice. But he opened his right hand, aligning his palm with Bingi, and grabbed his right wrist with his left hand. If it's not strong enough, it doesn't make any sense. Bloody pheasant mouth. Tweet. A big bird made up of ice blocks detached from its right hand, and its wings spread out to a width of tens of meters. The ice bird let out a sharp cry and charged straight towards the ice wing. Boom. After the collision, there was a huge explosion, which was heard by most of Malenford. The cold air was overflowing, and the temperature of the entire Malenford dropped a lot, and the navy who was close to the square breathed out a visible white vapor. Sengoku, who was sorting documents in the office, shook his hand, and a document slid down the table. Bah! The goat at the table thought it was given to him by the owner again, so he opened his mouth and bit it. Sengoku's face changed greatly, and he reached out to grab it. Hey, return it to me. This is not a document that needs to be destroyed. With a cigarette stick in her mouth, Ms. S looked towards the square through the window and complained, these two guys were really unclean. On the square at this time, the raging cold wind slowly dissipated. Just now, the ground had only formed ice cubes, but now there are no ice cubes. Because in the battle of the moves just now, the frozen slate finally couldn't bear the pressure, and when it was hit by the air current, it exploded directly. Kuzan dodged away and was about to use observation hockey to observe it. At this moment, a blue figure rushed towards lightning, and there were blue lines on Loya's shoulders and face, and he upgraded with him. Appeared exactly the same. The diamond pattern on the wrist flickered with a rhythmic rhythm, which made Loya's speed increase by another step. Huh, that's the unfinished move, this kid said. The speed has changed so fast. But it's meaningless if you can't shave it. Kuzan was a little surprised, but immediately recovered his emotions. He opened his big hand and casually took the kick wrapped in frost. Loya was taken aback. This is unscientific. My speed is 3 times faster than before. Give some face, okay. Before Roha could react, Kuzan's left hand turned into an ice cube, and the front end expanded like a horn, biting fiercely on Roha's waist, and then quickly spread around him. I'm going to suffer. A second before the ice cubes blocked his sight, Loya shrank his eyes and swallowed. The next moment, Kuzan's cold voice entered his ears. What's the name of this trick you developed? Oh, I remember, Icefall Funeral, right? Crunch. Apply what you've learned. You said it yourself, but obviously you didn't get the meaning. Kuzan picked up his jacket and draped it over his shoulders, speaking to Loa who was breathing in the cold air on the ground. And this trick will be better if used by a frozen man like me. You just control it, and you can't catch up with me in terms of details. Loya just wants to give himself a big mouth now. What a handsome man if he has nothing to do. As a Hokage fan, how could he not know about Gaara's sand waterfall funeral, so he imitated this trick and made an ice waterfall funeral. It was used for the first time a few days ago, and he successfully caught Kuzan under the cover of the terrain, making him disgraced. Retribution now. Lying on the ground, Loya touched his ribs, and he broke 3 more. This is the result of Kuzan's mercy. There is someone on duty in the infirmary, we will continue tomorrow. Looking at the sky, Kuzan left the square with one hand in his pants kabuto. After Kuzan left, Loya got up after a long delay, and went to the infirmary step by step with a grin. Why am I so stupid? Loya rolled the eyes of the dead fish to think about this question, knowing that his opponent was Kuzan. He didn't even consider the possibility of the move being learned by the opponent, and suffered a big loss. There is an acquaintance in the infirmary, an old acquaintance. Lieutenant General Mole, are you injured? Loya looked at the man sitting on the hospital bed in surprise. Mole sat half naked, the white bandages around his waist soaked with blood. He had a sullen expression, and when he heard the voice, he looked back and smiled reluctantly. Oh, it's Loya. Why did you come to the infirmary? Without waiting for Loya to reply, the old doctor helped to answer. You mean Loya kid, he has to come this time every 3 or 5 times. You must know that he is fighting against Qingzi, and it is strange that he is not injured. Yes, that's it. Loya spread his hands to the mole, then found a chair and sat down, facing the old man and lifted his clothes. By the way, Dr. Oliver, I should have broken 3 ribs this time, you see. Quote. The old man called Oliver glanced at Loya, stopped at the position of his chest, and then turned his head to continue drugging the mole. Seeing that you are so energetic, you know that there is no big problem, and your body is recovering. The ability is very strong. I will take the special medicine later and use it internally and externally, and I will be fine in 2 or 3 days. Quote. Do you dare to be serious? We are Dragon Slayer and not Deadpool. Loya groaned in his heart, but still waited honestly. While waiting, he looked at Mole. By the way, Lieutenant General Mole, what did you do? Loya knew that Mole was out on a mission a few days ago, but he didn't expect to be injured so badly. This is a powerful Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, a master who can be counted on the vast sea, who can beat him like this. Looking at the wound, it looked like it was hit by a heavy object. Does anyone in the sea use a hammer as a weapon? Loya thought so. In the face of Loya's question, Mole sighed. Originally, I shouldn't have told you about this matter, but since you are a disciple of Teacher Zepha and General Qingzi, it's okay to tell you. After a pause, Mole held his breath as he waited for Dr. Oliver to cut off the blood-stained bandage on the rotten flesh, and then continued. Marshal Sengoku asked me to investigate Brother Doflamming a few days ago, and the mission is in progress. It went very smoothly, and we also found some handles for the flamingos. But we didn't expect. On the way back, the killer of the Dark World attacked us. We suffered heavy damage and died dozens of Navy ships. Was able to escape. Dark World, Doflamingo. Loya recited the 2 names silently. Right, almost forgot. The world of One Piece is not only limited to the Navy and the pirates, but also the world government, the Revolutionary Army and other forces. Among them, the Dark World is also a behemoth, and even one of the 4 emperors, Bigu Mum, has cooperated with it a lot. Then how did you escape? Loya asked. Hearing this, Mole's expression was very exciting. He was angry and sad, and his face changed. It took a long time before he said, I was rescued by Doflamingo, do you believe it? Loya, I believe it, because it's Doflamingo. For nothing else, just because the other party is the famous, young master, Dover, that unruly, cruel and unkind guy, it is not surprising that he would do such a cat-and-mouse thing. Mo looked at Loya steadily, and suddenly smiled. Yes, because the other party is Doflamingo. The things the Don Quixote family has done can hide most of the world, but they can never hide the world government and the navy. It's just that what the world government needs is balance, or the deeper reason is because it has traded with the other party, so it has always turned a blind eye to Mingi's affairs. But the navy is different. They have always wanted to seize the opponent's handle and abolish the Chiwahai system, which is why Mole's experience this time. This time, Dover obviously wanted to teach the navy a lesson. He still needs the Kibukai signboard for his activities, and he won't tear his face with the navy, so he let the mole go. There is only one reason for being so blatant and maddening, because he is a legitimate pirate from the Seven Wuhai Sea. For whatever reason, if the navy shot him first, it was a breach of the agreement, and he took care of it. Chapter 19 New Move. Chiwahai has been around for more than 10 years, and it has long since become too big. In the beginning, the world government may have really considered using the Chiwahai to stabilize the sea. In fact, they have indeed done so over the years. Whether it is Moonlight Mariah, Sand Crocodile Rockdoll, the Semi-Chan oil in the original Shichibukai, or the top-sea powerhouses such as Storm Coonbear and Hawkeye Mahawk, their existence has made countless pirates disappeared on the Great Route. In this respect, it is a positive thing. But no matter what system will slowly decay with the passage of time, just like the world government, the Tianlong people have already become the biggest cancer in the world, and the Chiwahai system naturally cannot escape this ending. A few years later, in order to obtain the ancient weapon Pluto, K-Rockville brought disaster to the country and the people in Alabasta, provoked a war, and plunged the entire country into war. The current Doflamingo uses the identity of Shichibukai as a cover to build an underground port in Dressrosa to conduct illegal transactions. These things can prove that the Chiwahai system has begun to decay. After all, it is a pirate, can it be stable for a few years or more than 10 years? Most of the Chiwahai system has long been the Navy's heart disease, and now the turmoil they have created is even worse than the impact caused by those ordinary pirates. However, under the orders of the world government, the Navy has no good solution. It is not possible to cancel this deep-rooted system overnight. It can only slowly collect evidence and wait for a fatal shot. But these don't need Loya to worry about it now. His current strength is limited, and he is just a recruit. No matter what Chiwahai does, he can't interfere. Saying goodbye to Mole and Dr. Oliver, Loya went back to the dormitory and drugged herself. The cold ointment stuck to his skin, making him shiver comfortably. After all, it is the headquarters of the Navy, and the medical ability is certain. There was a burst of itching from the broken ribs, and the burning pain receded like a tide. After wrapping the bandages, Loya silently opened the panel with golden fingers. Name, Christopher Loya. Energy stage, 2nd and 3rd. Energy value, 400/700. Mana, 5,000 5,000. Mana recovery speed, 450 per minute. After this period of practice, Loya finally came to the 2nd and 3rd floor. Although the data on the attribute panel only shows the magic value and magic recovery speed, Loya can feel that with each upgrade, whether it is his strength, endurance or physical strength, it is not limited to the displayed ones. However, what had the greatest impact on him during this period was the combat experience gained from the high-pressure training under Kuzan. On the desert island, his opponents are all beasts with an IQ of less than 25, not to mention as smart as the Fur tribe. I am afraid that even the Kung Fu Walrus is not as good. Fighting against them, apart from getting familiar with one's own power level, naturally yields nothing. But now it's different. Kuzan is not a yellow monkey. Whether it is the use of fruit ability or melee combat, he is at the level of a general. Under his personal guidance, Loya's strength has improved by leaps and bounds. Especially the ability to resist beatings is not much better than Aldo. Even if the defense is insufficient, the recovery ability is not comparable to Aldo. Of course, this is a very sad thing. Today I got a total of 75 energy points, which is not bad. With the improvement of the ability level, Loya and Kuzan's energy value increases only 50 points now. Close the panel, and the Loya activity is ready for the next practice. Dragon Slayer magic is a skill that uses force to break through skill. As long as the level of magic power increases, the power will be greatly improved. And the ice modeling magic, with the frozen man Kuzan, naturally improves very quickly. However, this is not what Loya is after. Who doesn't have any blood in the heart of watching Rimmon? Loya yearns for the kind of fight that hits the flesh, rather than using skills to fight against each other. But due to his own strength and other reasons, he can't do that level now. So, Loya is going to develop a new move, a move that can improve his melee ability. The idea of the move comes from the explosive state in which the Dragon Slayer magician swallowed a lot of magic power in the original fairy tale. But here comes the problem. Although this world has a bug-level product like Devil Fruit ability, it has no magic power, or no one who can use magic power. I want the horse to run, but don't let the horse graze. It is difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice. So Loya thought of a recipe. Magic, don't you have it? And he can also shape magic, why should he draw magic from the outside? Anyway, my dragon slaying magic is not taught by the dragon mother, what if it can be successful? So he did a mortal thing, he used modeling magic in his body. Although it was uncomfortable to die every time, but after many attempts, he really figured out a feasible solution. Slowly gathering magic power in his hand, Loya recalled the feeling of the previous battle, and pressed his hand to his stomach. Magic power is intangible and intangible, as long as they are not allowed to form ice cubes, the magic power can be pressed from the outside into the body. At the moment when the magic entered the body, Loya's eyes suddenly widened, the feeling of exposing the internal organs of the intestines to dry in the ice and snow. Very exciting. But the next moment, this feeling quickly disappeared, and the special physique of the Dragon Slayer sorcerer sensed the invasion of external magic, and some changes occurred that even Roha couldn't understand. He only felt a loosening of his hand, the magic power linked from the palm disappeared instantly, and then his body began to heat up, his heart beat faster, and the magic power began to boil. Seeing this, Loya knew that he had also succeeded in entering this time. He stood up abruptly, took a deep breath, and wrapped the magic seat around his body. Next, he needed to test the strength. The magic power around the body produced a circle of shock marks, and the invisible air was expelled in circles like water. One after another blue magic lines emerged from the body, flashing and disappearing with the breath, making him appear mysterious and unpredictable. Feeling the boiling power in his body, Loya raised his fist and hit the air twice. Snapped, snapped. The crisp sound of breaking the air sounded, and Loya smacked his lips and shook his head in disappointment. A bit stronger than before, but limited. Although he has obtained a considerable increase, his speed and strength have almost doubled, but in this state, his physical strength may still not be able to catch up with the generals who have learned the sixth form of the Navy. It is still very early to use it as a conventional fighting method. Just when Loya regretted, he suddenly saw a piece of skin on the back of his hand that seemed to be cracked, and the dried dead skin turned upwards. What is this? Aged old dirt. Loya used his fingernails to button, but the touch from his fingers made him blink in confusion. This hardness. Is it a nail? No, is it? Loya thought of a possibility, forming an ice needle on his finger, and slammed it down there. Jingle. The ice needle in his hand snapped, and Loya saw that the cracked skin flashed a hint of dark blue, and the surrounding dry dead skin was shaken off, leaving only a blue outline the size of a fingernail. From the outline, it could be seen that it was the scales of something. Thinking of the scene in the original book, Loya retracted his hand and observed carefully, is it a dragon scale? He still had a fresh memory of the changes that occurred in him when he stepped from the first rank to the second rank, but since then, although there was still a lot of movement in each upgrade after that, the dragon might radiated out to disturb the people, but there was no such thing as similar. Due to the deformation, he gradually forgot about it. Today, when he saw the dragon scale on his hand again, he immediately recalled what it was. Loya caught a glimpse of inspiration, and turned the dragon scale to the light, half squinting his eyes. Perhaps, I can take the initiative to enter that half dragon state. Chapter 21 month later, ready to go. The first one. Thank you book friend Shisha Yeyu for the 500 reward. Thank you book friend Uncle Cat who loves to sleep for the 200 reward. I actually got a reward. This really flattered me. Thank you both, it makes me more motivated to code. In addition, I would like to thank all book friends for their recommendation votes. I downloaded a mobile phone assistant today and found that I can turn to the names of book friends who voted for recommendation votes. Starting tomorrow, I will make a separate thank you list at the end of the chapter. You and I will witness the growth of this book. 10 days have passed, and finally, tomorrow is the time for the actual combat assessment. This month, Loya has lived a very fulfilling day. In the morning, after washing up, having breakfast, then carrying a bucket and a mop to clean the toilet, while using the freezing ability to tease the tricky recruits, such as freezing the urine Jinchuriki column, and admiring the confused expressions on their faces covering their lower bodies. At noon, after taking a bath, go to lunch, discuss with Ms. S what kind of food is plentiful and delicious, and decide what to eat for lunch tomorrow. Winning the duel, Ms. S gave him the privilege of deciding on the menu. In the afternoon, after cleaning the toilet and taking a shower, I had dinner, exchanged combat skills and philosophy with the gay instructor, and was thrown out by the angry instructor. I have to say that none of the instructors who can serve as an instructor in the Navy Headquarters Recruit Battalion are fake handles, and they are extremely skilled in all kinds of skills. At night, I was dragged by Kuzan to the small square, feeding each other, and studying the use of freezing ability. And to carry out research on how to increase the human body's ability to resist freezing. The test product is Loya. During this month, Loya's little days were very pleasant. Tomorrow is the day of the actual combat test, and then you must get the top 3 to enter the elite camp. Kuzan leaned against the wall, the blindfold on his forehead was pulled down to cover his eyes, and he said to Loya, who was studying the freezing ability. Hearing the words, the latter put away the ice in his hand, paused, and suddenly swung his backhand, shooting a cone of ice at Kuzan. Kuzan tilted his head slightly, dodged the attack, and was about to say something when he suddenly used shaved and left the place. Just less than a second after he left, a violent explosion sounded, and the section of the wall was actually blown apart, leaving a notch with a diameter of 1 meter in place. Kuzan appeared behind Loya and raised his hands. Alas, do you want to be beaten again? Ice ball. 5 strands of ice Jinchuriki column shot out from the palms of each hand, hitting Loya's back like lightning. Ice make, Orochi. Loya didn't dodge or evade, he hammered with both hands, and a blue energy suddenly appeared behind him, seeing that the position was just above the attack path issued by Kuzan. Kuzan didn't understand what Roha was doing for a while. He didn't even have physical ice cubes. How could this thin layer of energy block his attack? So he sneered, and further accelerated the speed of the ice Jinchuiki column. Anyway, he is very clear about Loya's physique. Even if he is really pierced, as long as he doesn't hit the key point, he will be alive the next day, not to mention that the main effect of this move is freezing rather than penetration. However, the situation soon changed. Just when Kuzan's ice Jinchuriki column came into contact with that layer of blue energy, he found that he had lost control of those ice Jinchuriki column. An inexplicable energy interfered with his ice and snatched the ice blocks away. The strange feeling spread backwards along the ice Jinchuriki column, and soon it would touch his entity, a kind of an indescribable sense of crisis struck. Seeing this, Kuzan made a decisive decision, disconnected the ice Jinchuriki column, and chose to retreat. Sure enough, the next moment, The ice Jinchuriki column he shot out just now was like paint, and it outlined the blue energy behind Loya's back little by little. The floor gnawed in pieces. When he missed a hit, the big snake swirled around as if it had life, protecting Loya in the middle. Cece spat a letter at him, and his blue and white pupils reflected his figure. Loya turned around slowly at this moment, and the blue pattern on his body was like a solid body at the moment, flashing and disappearing with his movements. Loya looked at Kuzan with a smile on his face. How about Mr. Kuzan? This is an ability I developed specifically to deal with you. Loya stretched out his hand and stroked the scales of the big snake, explaining, this is my trick, teacher. The big snake has no entity, just a stream of energy. As long as the attack of any type of nature does not exceed the withstand strength, it will hit it will then be frozen and turned into nourishment for its appearance. And for your ice cubes, teacher, I can take control of them even more, and even go a step further and take control of your body. You must know that something like the ice dragon is the master of the power of frost. Ah la la, you are really dangerous kid. Kuzan pushed up the blindfold, looked at the ice snake around Loya, and then looked at the wall that was blown out. Orochi, Frost Bomb, don't you like seeing me so much? You actually developed a move to deal with me. Humans are creatures that require pressure to progress. I have no enemies in the boot camp. Of course, I have to set up an imaginary enemy for myself, and you, Mr. Kuzan, are naturally the best choice. Oh, it sounds very reasonable. Kuzan yawned, and then looked at Loya without sadness or joy. Although his expression was still calm and he looked lazy, Loya, who was familiar with him, knew that Kuzan was angry. Have I gone too far? Loya thought, so in the next second, Kuzan rescued the answer. He did go too far. Even a person of Kuzan's character would feel angry at the considerate targeting of his apprentice who he taught himself. So his return gift is an overwhelming freezing attack, also known as Ice Age. I'll go first. You've also completed that move, and passing the test will not be a problem. When you join the elite camp, Teacher Zephyr should have a reason to teach you the 6 naval moves. Then, go to bed early, Loya-kun. Putting the coat on his shoulders, Kuzan waved his hands with his back to Loya, and disappeared into the night, leaving only a solid blue ice sculpture in place and a small square that was frozen into a world of ice and snow. After Kuzan left, a purple figure appeared in the small square. Zephyr touched his chin and knocked on the frozen Loya. He saw the internal situation and nodded reassuringly. Well, still alive. Should I say it is an ice dragon? Being treated like this every day is intact. Quote. Thinking of what happened to Loya in the past month, Zephyr couldn't help but express his sympathy and admiration. But Kuzan obviously kept his hand, and the speed of ability activation is not generally slow. Even this speed can't be avoided. It looks like strengthening your melee abilities must be on the agenda right away. Quote. After checking, Zephyr thoughtfully shaved off, leaving Loya to bask in the moon on the square. The next day, the sun was shining. After being frozen all night, Loya, who was relieved only by the warm sun the next day, sneezed fiercely, holding her hands and shivering nonstop. I'm going, do you want to be so ruthless? Is this kind of big move in the Ice Age random? It will kill people, okay. He glanced at the sun and patted his head in annoyance. I'm going to suffer. I said it's time to gather for the boat in the morning. What time is it? Then jumped into the air, stepped on the ice and rushed to the port. In the past month, Loya's gains are not only reflected in ability development, but his Dragon Slayer system has also been greatly improved. Name: Christopher Loya, World Autocorrect. Energy Stage: 2nd and 5th layers. Energy Value: 429 hundredths. Mana: 8,000 8,000ths. Mana Recovery Speed: 750 per minute. Compared with himself a month ago, his magic value has nearly doubled, which allows him to use the Ice Dragon Slayer magic more fully, instead of having to be frugal and careful, most of the time. Attacks use shape magic. In addition, Loya's dragon body increased again by 2 percentage points, reaching 20%. It was this seemingly insignificant 2% improvement that made Aldo no longer interested in competing with him. Because this is a critical point, reaching 20%, Loya found that his strength was 3 times stronger. It took several days to get it under control. Coupled with the sturdy features of the improved version of the ice armor, even if he is not domineering, he can now smash the steel abruptly. But correspondingly, Loya also paid a little price. That is, no matter what he eats now, he can no longer increase the energy value, which is consistent with his guess. And the power of the dragon, which worried Loya the most, luckily did not increase with the energy level. However, in order to develop new moves and frequently use the simplified version when fighting against Kuzan, the dragon's power has risen rapidly, and now it has reached 5%. The power of Dragon Slayer magic has indeed increased a lot, but this increase is not what Roha expected. But there is nothing he can do. After all, there is no one in this world who can teach him the journey of a wizard, and he relies on his own experiments.